everyone. Welcome to the August 11th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. I would like to welcome everyone back from our summer break. We are operating in a virtual environment and will likely do so through the fall. I would like to ask for patience as we use this platform for our public meetings. There may be slight delays as we transition between speakers, presentations, and participants. If any participants have issues with the technology, please send a message to the moderator. We have a number of items on our agenda today, and some requests have been discussed at length. I would ask that the commission members to focus comments and questions on the identified outstanding issues for each request. We may hear an abbreviated staff presentation for items that have been previously appeared before us. I would ask the commission to hold all questions until the conclusion of a presentation and any public comment. I would also ask each commissioner to be recognized by the chairperson before speaking. With 7 discussion items on the agenda today, I would ask everyone to be efficient with their time so we can discuss all items. And before we begin with our discussion items, I would like to recognize the new Planning and Development Director, Patrick Young. Pat, welcome to the Planning Commission. Would you like to say a few words?
Good morning, Chair Tomasulo and members of the Commission. Thank you so much for this opportunity to introduce myself. I'll be brief, certainly in respect of your long agenda. As the chair said, I am the new director of the Planning and Development Department effective July 20th, so this is the beginning of my 4th week. I want to start by saying thank you for the important work that you do. I've been in the field of planning and development for over 25 years, 21 in North Carolina and the last 12 right down the road in Durham. And I know how complex and challenging community planning and land use issues are. Really appreciate the invaluable contribution that you make to good land use planning in our community. You can only do this work with complete trust and confidence in staff, and fortunately, I know that you have that with the leadership of Deputy Director Ken Bowers and Travis Crane and our whole planning team who do such excellent work to serve this board, and I have no intent of changing these staff assignments. But I am available to you. I will schedule time with the chair this week to make sure that I understand the opportunities and challenges that you all are facing. I'm available to support you and our excellent staff as you continue to do your work. My core values are honesty, open communication, and accountability, and that's what you'll get from me and continue to get from our staff going forward. In terms of priorities, I believe that there's 3 primary priorities for this year. Helping roll out the new engagement strategy for our residents centered around equity and inclusiveness. Secondly, helping continue to create more predictability and accountability in the administrative development review process, development that you all have reviewed and council has authorized, making sure that the residential and business economic opportunities that come with development can happen timely in a predictable fashion. And finally, continuing to support and work with you all and staff on the UDO text amendments that help ensure housing access and affordability to keep our community accessible to all folks at all points in their life and across the income spectrum. So thanks again for your work and for your time, and I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them, and otherwise I'll just thank you, and I look forward to getting to know and working with each of you.
Great. Thanks, Pat. We're excited to have you. Moving on, we will start off with the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair?
And yes.
I'm sorry if I can interrupt real quick. We just need to announce officially that Commissioner Winters is attending by audio only. That's a statutory requirement, so I just wanted to get that out there. That she is attending, but she's connected audio only.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yep. So the consent agenda is a list of requests that can be acted upon in motion. Instead of acting on each request individually, the Commission can approve the items with one motion and vote. There are 3 items on the consent agenda, and we actually are adding a 4th. One item appears to satisfy timing requirements for delivery of the request to Planning Commission. The recommendation for Z 4819 is to defer to a future meeting. The remaining 2 items are being delivered to the Planning Commission and referred directly to text change. And I'd like to add that there is another text change, TC 1419, that I'd like to add as well, and that will be bundled with the two other text changes and go directly to text change commission. So it's nothing that we have to really worry about. To be clear, the commission is not voting on the final disposition of the application. It's simply deferring discussion to a future agenda. So including those three items plus TC 1419, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda. Commissioner Fox?
Motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
And I saw Commissioner Miller.
Second.
All right. Commissioner Fox has offered a motion. Commissioner Miller has seconded the motion. I'll ask Janitha for a roll call of members to record their individual votes. At the end of the roll, I will announce the outcome.
Good morning. Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters? Commissioner Winters? Chair Tomasillo?
Aye. I do know that Commissioner Winters was having technical issues, and that's why her camera was not working.
Commissioner Winters?
She's messaged that she's here. Her audio is not working.
Can she chat her approval or approval?
Sorry, if that was directed at me, no, probably not. I mean, the purpose for having the video or the audio is so you can identify the person who's actually voting. I think you have enough votes to approve the consent agenda. We just need to keep working with Commissioner Winters to see if she can communicate with us.
If she's unable to register her vote for the consent agenda, how should that be recorded in the minutes?
Well, she's in attendance and didn't vote, so that's a yes.
Okay.
Okay. Then the motion to approve the consent agenda passes 9-0. Thank you, everybody. And I guess maybe this is a question for Ray. Before moving forward, do you think that possibly if Commissioner Winters is having trouble via her computer that she could call in?
I understand she's trying to.
I'm sorry, I'm here right now. I'm sorry. I've worked out the audio part. I apologize, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah. Glad we have quorum. Whew. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to old business. We will now begin the old business portion of the agenda. These are requests that have appeared on a previous Planning Commission agenda. The first case is item E1. It's case number Z820. This is a request to rezone less than an acre of land from R4 to R10 conditional use. This request was last discussed at the June 30th meeting. The request was deferred to allow the applicant to consider some new zoning conditions related to landscaping and buffering. I would ask that on the new conditions that have been offered. We have already heard from the public on this request. If there is a desire to hear from the applicant and any members of the public, the commission will need to vote to grant additional time. I will note Sarah Ellis will present on behalf of the city, but there are a few members of the public signed up to speak. So just to note that. But Sarah, if you're ready, you can go ahead.
Yep, good morning. This is Sarah Ellis. I'm the case planner for Z820, a request to rezone 510 Carolina Avenue from R6 with the special residential parking overlay district to R10 with that same special residential parking overlay district. The request is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan overall, and the Planning Commission deadline for action is September 9th, 2020. I'll be brief on these. Just an overview of the site. It's located just south of Western Boulevard in a predominantly residential neighborhood with a small variety of different residential developments. Again, you have seen these previously, but as there were changes to the conditions that did relate to the site, I wanted to display the view of the current site. So there's a stand of trees in the front of the site that's adjacent to a small creek that runs just along Carolina Avenue on the site. So just to refresh the view again. And I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so the new conditions, and these, I underlined what are new since the previous review on June 30th, 2020. So the applicant has offered that a protective yard be installed adjacent to the southern property boundary, and that's adjacent to a single family house that is next to the subject property, and that boundary would meet the UDO standards of a type A2 protective yard, which just means that it specifies the types of tree plantings and the spacings of the tree as well as shrub plantings for that protective yard. The change that you're seeing here added some additional clarity. What was previously offered said that some tree plantings would be installed, but it did not specify a type, a distance, or spacing. So now that has been clarified through this change. The applicant also offered a new condition that the front vegetative buffer shall remain undisturbed, and that's that buffer that you saw in the image right before this on that previous slide that showed there's a mature stand of trees and a small creek in that area. This condition stated that the area would be undisturbed. However, the previous iteration did not include a distance, so the applicant has clarified this and added a distance to the area that would specify what cannot be disturbed and just added more clarity. I'm ready for the next slide. Again, the request is consistent with future land use map designation of moderate density residential. There's no outstanding issues, and your deadline for action is September 9th, 2020, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. We definitely heard a lot last time. I know that the applicant has spoken to a few commissioners to help clarify questions. I know that some other commissioners have also done some work prior to the meeting to better understand some issues. And so since there are three neighbors signed up to speak, do we wish to allow 6 minutes to hear each one of them? Sorry, I'm not seeing. Yes, okay. Then I will make a motion to open up public hearing for 6 minutes for each side. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Winters. I'll second.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. So we will reopen the public hearing. And I would ask if we can to start with the neighbors. And I think that we can use the time that the applicant has to ask specific questions, if that's okay with everybody, since we've heard this before. Hello?
Sounds good to me, Matt.
Okay. Okay, great. Sorry, I'm getting a pinwheel, so I'm just not, I wanted to make sure that you all can still hear me.
Loud and clear.
Okay, okay, great. Then Ray, can we start with the first, I guess we have a motion and a second, so we have to go through roll call to vote on that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then, Shanitha, would you mind going through roll call?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Right. Ms. Bennett, Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks,
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman,
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver,
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo,
Aye.
and Commissioner Winters.
Aye.
All right, so public hearing is open. If we could hear from the first neighbor signed up to speak, Diane Bell.
Hey there. Good morning.
Morning.
I just want to reiterate a few things, and I also want to first make a clarification on the Swamp Creek. It is not a swamp creek. It is actually a major creek that provides water going down actually through Pineview, which if you know, that's had some major work done to handle stormwater. This creek handles a lot of stormwater from 4 streets above where I live even. So it all comes down to Carolina Avenue because we're at the bottom. So that is a major creek, and it has had a stormwater study done, and it is still a problem. It's only going to get worse with the continued building up the area. So my major points are that if this 8 units are put through, if the rezoning is put through, the marketing is going to be to college students. It's going to change the character of our neighborhood. It's going to increase street parking. It's going to increase traffic, which is already insane. I counted 89 cars just off the top from my Ring camera going down a street that has been characterized as a dead end. It is not a dead end. It's the only way through some areas to make a left turn. It's opening up the doorway to more R10 rezoning. There is not enough land. It's 0.89 acres, but once you do the riparian buffer and the creek, there is not enough land to rezone and put on the size building that he wants to. I don't understand why we're even asking about a rezoning. Work within the zoning that's there. You can put plenty on that without rezoning. And changing the character of our neighborhood is like a huge thing.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
Trying to get it all in.
Yep, thanks.
And it's not all.
So the next member of the public that signed up to speak is Maria D'Amelio.
Hi, my name is Maria. You also already said that. Thanks for listening to us again. We met with the owners and his lawyer and architect. They invited us out to the property, and we went to meet with them. We also had Stormy Forte come out beforehand and to meet with us. And a bunch of the other neighbors that are in the Avent West neighborhood came out to also meet Stormy Forte. And there was questions, and I don't know if this is the right place to ask this or not, but one of the neighbors was not aware that when one property gets rezoned, that the adjoining properties can also more easily become rezoned. So while they live a couple blocks down in R4, they were thinking, well, because this is 2 blocks away or 3 blocks away, that why should we be concerned with the R10 zoning? And my answer was that because once the one goes, then it's a domino effect. It can all turn R10. And the map that was shown by Sarah Ellis shows that it's right up, against low density in the future planning map. It's not very far. And you have one property that's two lots away from that is coming up for rezoning for R10. That's future land use map. Concerns come from. The traffic is horrendous. While we were standing meeting stormy winters, we had to get out of the way because there's cars parked on both sides of the streets. There's no sidewalk. So I encourage, before the Planning Commission and the city starts telling people and developers to rezone to R10, that they put the infrastructure in place in the city to get the pedestrian sidewalks and get it to be safe to use bicycles. Professors live in this neighborhood. They want someplace where they can live and not have students right on top of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. Yep. The next member of the public is Paul, I think it's Houghton. You have 2 minutes, Paul, if you're there.
I don't have Paul in the meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's only 2? Or is there someone else? Right.
I don't have anyone else.
Okay. Okay. Then that ends the public comment. We do have the applicants on the line as well. I know that there were specific questions last week from 2 months ago from a few commissioners. Do we have any specific questions? I know that Sarah went through the updates. And so I had specific concerns if you've spoken to neighbors or the applicant between now and then and have any follow-up questions. Do we wish to hear from the applicant, or do we wish to make a motion at this point in time? Commissioner O'Haver?
Thanks, Matt. I just went back and looked at my notes from the past meeting, and I believe it was Commissioner Lampman and maybe a couple of others had some questions about the net developable area, and I think that's part of the reason why we asked to defer the case. And so I'm just wondering if we can get some clarity on, I believe the questions were about net developable. There's a 65% allowable impervious, Ben Brown told us at the last meeting. And so I believe there were some questions about what is the percent impervious on this site. And those were sort of the 2 big questions I saw that I remember from our last meeting. So I was just wondering if it would be helpful to see if there's any update on that information from the applicant.
Okay, thank you. The representative for the applicant is Kenneth Haywood. Kenneth, do you have any comments about the net developable area?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. The 2 items that we talked about last time, one was Commissioner Hicks and others had wanted some clarification on the conditions. Sarah Ellis has gone through those, and so unless there are any specific questions, I think we've addressed those with explaining the number of trees and the spacing. The second issue is what Commissioner Haver was just mentioning in terms of net developable acre. We have just under an acre of property, so this is a fairly large tract, 0.89 acres. We have done the calculations. We are working with George Finch with Boning Associates on this particular project. And according to the calculations that he has run, I'm pleased to say that is still going to be undisturbed. And so right now the existing building is 0.22 acres, so just over 2/10 of an acre. The proposal with the new buildings, including drive, walks, etc., is proposed to be 0.34, or just under around 38%. And so the net change between those two is fairly small. But like I said, I think the nice thing about the project that we're working on, be able to maintain as much pervious surface as possible and maintain the riparian buffer and the grassy areas. 0.55 acres is going to be undisturbed as part of this. And so that was a specific question, Commissioner Haver, you asked in terms of net available acres. We are just at about 0.34 acres that would be developed out of this. We believe that with, we have 100 feet between the edge of the right-of-way and the edge of the stream bank of riparian buffer that will be preserved because of the fact it is a riparian buffer. That will act as a sponge in addition to grassy areas that will be already in existence. And so we think that from that standpoint, we will not be contributing to any of the stormwater issues that the neighbors have talked about. We've listened. I think it's been very helpful for all of us to hear their concerns. Hopefully city is also hearing that, and city can take from this the ability to be able to look at it and see if there are improvements or necessary changes that need to be made in terms of the existing issue. But we do not believe from our project that we will be exacerbating or doing anything to negatively impact that based on the size of our project and the requirements under the UDO.
Okay, thank you very much, Kenneth. I would like to, does that seem to answer your question, Commissioner O'Haver?
Absolutely. And again, I just wanted to make sure I remember those sort of being two, and the buffering, which I think Roberta and Tika had some concerns about, which they addressed. So to me, I feel like they've provided the information we requested at the last meeting.
Great. And I do know that Commissioner McIntosh also did some nice follow-up, I think digging into a little bit of the stormwater questions as well. And I think that one of the, if you want to say one of the benefits of this case coming to being presented is that the issues on this street have come to the forefront for the city. And basically through Commissioner McIntosh's emails, both with planning and stormwater, kind of daylighted a city program called the Drainage Assistance and Drainage Assistance Program. And that is where the actual street collectively can apply for that and get prioritized through the city. I don't have too many details, but I do think that some of us are able to follow up after the meeting with the street in general, regardless of how the rezoning moves forward. But it's a way that collectively, as a small neighborhood community, some of the issues can start to be addressed.
Matt, at a minimum, do you have, or Commissioner McIntosh, do you have a contact at the city? Would that be through Ben Brown, or maybe you can at least share that with the neighbors?
It's actually Ben Brown, and it's just ben.brown@raleighnc.gov.
We have a stormwater staff representative on the line as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess maybe if they are there, maybe a 1-minute snapshot of just the Drainage Assistance Program, just so everyone can hear it.
Sure. This is Ashley Rogers with Stormwater Management. So the Drainage Assistance, the Drainage Assistance Program is available to any ratepayer in the city of Raleigh. One of the primary considerations is whether there is a public contribution of water to the drainage problem. So, water coming from the right-of-way or something like that. Dale Hyatt actually runs that program for stormwater, and they get a certain amount of funding every year, and they have a prioritizing ranking system where they will evaluate each project, and as new projects come in, new areas come in, those rankings may change. Obviously, if something more severe comes in, then it may go toward the top of the list for budgeting and for prioritization. But it is a very good program, and they do quite a number of projects every year to assist homeowners and neighborhoods with issues related to flooding, where there, again, is a public contribution of stormwater. As you could imagine, things like structural flooding and terrible erosion issues obviously get higher up on that priority list. But yeah, that's a brief summary of the program.
Great. Thank you. That's great to know that we have that as a resource for our community. All right, with that, in the effort of trying to maintain efficiency today and respect for everyone's time, we have heard some of the follow-up from the neighbors. We've heard the clarified and more detailed conditions, knowing that stormwater was also an issue, but beyond this specific site, that there are options for that as well. I'm curious if any commissioners would like to make a motion for this. Do we have any? Well, sorry, I guess more so, I'd like to open up for discussion before making a motion. Is there any discussion items that any commissioners have?
I just want to say I appreciate the extra attention to the impervious surface calculation, and way to go, McIntosh, for doing that research. That's really great for the community. So I'm prepared to vote.
Okay. Commissioner Hicks?
I also wanted to echo Commissioner McIntosh's research and for helping bring that to the forefront. In addition, just to commend the applicant, I feel like they really worked with the questions that we had for them and went above and beyond the average or what's expected of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we take a vote? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Commissioner Lightman? Yep.
It's been a while, so I am going to make the motion to approve case number Z820 510 Caroline Avenue. I believe it is consistent with the future land use map and consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, the applicant has made considerable effort to make this appropriate and communicate with the community. And it's, what else do I say?
I mean, it's adding much needed housing.
Adding much needed housing, yeah, to the local area.
Okay.
I think you're hunting for the magic words reasonable and in the public interest.
It's reasonable and in public interest.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. Was it Commissioner Fox who had a second? Okay. So there's been a motion and a second. I will ask Chinita to roll call the record of individual votes now.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The motion passes unanimously 9-0. I'd like to thank both the applicant and the community members for the thoughtful discussion through all this, and do feel that a lot of positive can come of this, and do understand a little bit of the concerns for the street, but do think that this will help really move things forward for everyone down there. Moving on to item E2, case number Z1719. This is a request to rezone approximately 3.3 acres of land from industrial mixed use 12 stories and downtown mixed use 12 stories, urban general, to downtown mixed use 40 stories, shopfront conditional use. This request was discussed at the June 23 meeting and deferred until today. During this meeting, there was a robust discussion around the request, and a deferral was granted to allow staff to review additional information regarding traffic. I would like to ask for a brief update from staff focusing on traffic review and any changes that have occurred since the last discussion. We've already had an applicant presentation and heard from the public on this request. Matt Clem, if you are ready, you can provide the staff overview.
Good morning, Planning Commission. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. Thanks for that quick review, Commissioner Tomasulo. We'll just advance to the next slide to get an aerial look at the property to be rezoned. Just let you soak that in for a second, and then we can move on to the next slide. A new zoning condition was added to provide a area on any future site plan to allow for a bike share station. So that's a new condition that has changed. Next. The plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map and urban form map. That has not changed. Next. You see the underlined policies here. Those were outstanding policies that were inconsistent based on the outdated traffic impact analysis that was originally provided. They are now consistent with the plan, or the request rather. Next. More consistent policies. Next. No inconsistent policies. And no outstanding issues. So as you mentioned, Chair, there were additional information submitted by the applicant following the last meeting. Transportation staff has reviewed the additional information and has determined that the impact of traffic would result in all of the signalized intersections in the area to operate at acceptable levels. Jason Myers with the Transportation Department is here to answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, I can take questions as well.
All right, thank you, Matt. So with that, sorry, I think the end of you broke up. You did say that Jason Myers is on the phone to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Jason, would you mind giving us a brief update as well, since this was the main talking point last time?
Sure. To be a little bit more specific about what Matt told you, is the applicant had sent a revised traffic impact analysis right before the last Planning Commission meeting when this was discussed. The analysis that our staff report at that time had been based off of used some old projections of traffic, because at the time when they submitted their application, this whole area was an active construction site with without really consistent and future and traffic patterns related to what would be in the future. During the time that the case was reviewed, the NCDOT project opened up some of the surrounding private development construction activity completed, so there was now more normal traffic volumes in a very small window between the beginning of the pandemic and the shutdowns that came from that and the finishing of that construction project. The applicant took some counts during that time, updated their analysis, and our review of that analysis agrees that all of the signalized intersections in the study area will operate at an acceptable level of service. Therefore, the concern about infrastructure sufficiency is not still there from the standpoint of expecting there to be any issues.
Okay, thank you for that update. Also, Commissioner O'Haver.
Sorry, if you were on a roll, keep going, Matt.
Okay. Did you have a specific question for Jason Myers?
Not for Jason. I was just going to say that the two big issues from my past notes was that time to review the TIA, but I also remember
the neighbor. Yeah.
About engaging the neighbors. Yeah, exactly.
Correct. Yep. So moving on to to the applicant, if Mr. Johnson is on the phone, I was curious to hear about any conversations that you've had with the neighbor next door, the AME Church, and any other neighbors that you've had. Mr. Johnson on the line with us?
Yeah, there you go. I was still muted. Sorry about that, Chair Thomasula. We've had discussions with all the neighboring property owners over many months. There was a specific question asked about the AME Empowerment Center that's next door. We've had additional discussions with them, numerous discussions. They look favorably upon the plan. They do not have any objection to the plan. We're still having discussions about whether or not there might be an opportunity to purchase that property. Those just haven't come to conclusion yet, but they've been frank, full, open discussion. They view the project favorably. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but we've engaged all of the neighbors.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Sure. And I'm happy to answer any other questions. I mean, we resolved all the transportation issues by getting up-to-date traffic counts. I mean, that's what it came down to. And as Jason said, all intersections are would operate at acceptable levels of service.
Thank you. The applicant at this point in time? Commissioner Hicks?
I have a follow-up question. I think I missed this discussion on this project, but I did look at the video recording. There was some discussion about a pedestrian connection around the railway, and I'm wondering, does that need to be included as a condition, or if I could just have some clarification on that?
Sure, I'm fine to give the clarification on that. We talked with staff about that. We had it as a proposed condition, but staff was concerned because the way we had to word the condition, anything we do, we still want to do the pedestrian crossing, and that's still planned to be done. And we have the permission of CSX to do that. But it relies on the final approval of two parties with them because they're on the side of the still depend on final approval of the plans by CSX. I mean, they want to look at it and sign off on the final plan. Because it relied on third parties with respect to the conditions, staff did not want to include it as a formal condition, but I will reassure you that it's in our best interest to have that crossing. We negotiated that crossing as part of the process. We fully intend on following through with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner O'Haver.
I move to recommend approval of rezoning case Z 1719. I believe the rezoning request is reasonable in the public best. Sorry, I went off mute there for a second.
You're still mute.
Oh. Okay, sorry. I believe it's compatible with the surrounding area, enables development of a constrained and underutilized site.
Commissioner Fox?
I'd like to second the motion.
And I didn't catch, Commissioner O'Haver, did you mention consistency with the future land use map and the comp plan in your motion?
No, it's supported by these specific policies in the comprehensive plan. Is that what you need?
No, you can just say it's consistent with both.
Consistent with both. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So there has been a motion and a second. Janitha, would you be able to take roll call?
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver.
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo.
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters.
Aye.
All right. So with a vote of 9-0, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item E3, case number Z3119. This is a request to rezone approximately 30 acres of land from residential 4 with Special Highway Overlay District 1, SHOD 1, to Residential 10, conditional use, with the Special Highway Overlay District 1. This request was last discussed during the June 30th meeting. We heard a staff presentation, an applicant presentation, and heard from members of the public. In response to previous discussions, the applicant has offered additional zoning conditions related to building setback, stormwater, and buffering. We do have a handful of neighbors signed up again to speak. We will first hear from Don Belk on behalf of the city for a quick update on those conditions.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Next slide, please. This rezoning case shows the predominant zoning in the area, which is R4, but there is significant agricultural productive land as well as conservation management zone property. Next slide, please. An aerial view. Next slide. And just showing the proximity, the location, it is adjacent to Blue Run Lane, which parallels I-540. Character photos. I wanted to focus just a moment on the conditions, the new conditions that have been submitted since you last saw this case. The overall density of this proposal has been lowered to 6 dwelling units per acre. No changes to condition number 4. Condition number 5, number of units, so that's 75% CO requirement, which would trigger the requirement the owner has agreed to construct an at-grade pedestrian connection to the existing Moose River Trail. Condition number 9 is new. That has been added. Initially, the developer was going to use stormwater wetlands in place of stormwater ponds. However, further analysis showed that this would not result in a significant improvement. So they did limit the impervious surface and will provide traditional stormwater treatment. Next slide. Again, existing versus proposed, the residential density for this proposal stands at 6 dwelling units per acre. It is no pedestrian connectivity. It would add to the housing supply. It is not served by transit. This proposal is inconsistent with the future land use map. And at this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Jason Myers briefly to talk about how these new conditions would impact transportation for this proposal.
Hi, I'm going to briefly go through a couple slides here. There are 2 maps in the comprehensive plan related to transportation that are important to this case. We often look at map 2 on the street plan. It's a map T5 for planned interchanges and grade separations is a little less important to most areas of the city, but very important to this area of the city. Next slide, please. So in this area, I've highlighted the case in red, and there are 2 planned interchanges. The combination of the limited access highway I-540 and the Neuse River prevent basically any permeability to transportation as currently planned to the east or west of this area now, and with the planned street to the south in the future. The entire area there that's highlighted is about 250 acres, and this site is about 30 acres of that. In terms of the capacity of a neighborhood street, that dashed green line in there, there's about 3,330 vehicles per day. That is really what that street is designed to carry. Next slide, please. So comparing the amount of land in this case to the amount of land that would be served by that street, these two pie charts show that it's about 12% of the land, but that about 42% of that theoretical capacity of that street is taken up by the trips generated from this land. That is a slight change from before, and the next slide shows what that was when it was 7.5 dwelling units per acre. So you can see if Brian wants to toggle back and forth once or twice, what that changes from 58 to 40, 54% of the capacity of that street remaining if this case were built out as is. And next slide after this. And this is why the policy T1.1 is inconsistent. And that is, I'll turn it back to Don.
Thank you, Jason. This proposal is inconsistent overall with the comprehensive plan, in addition to being inconsistent with the future land use map. These policies have come into consistency since the last time you saw this, based on actually previously based on conditions proposed by the applicant. These EP policies are now consistent, and you see the inconsistent policies listed here. Again, inconsistent with the flume. The approval would amend the map from rural residential to moderate density residential. Outstanding issues, the deadline for action. Your recommendation on this case has passed. Therefore, an extension for this case would be required if you desire to deliberate further on the case. Again, it is inconsistent with both the flume and with several of the LE policies of the comprehensive plan, as well as policy T1.1. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. To kind of maintain our cadence, just wanted to see if did commission members wish to open up the public hearing to hear from the neighbors?
Yes, this is Commissioner Winters. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my computer was delayed there. Then, Commissioner Winters, did you want to make the motion to open it up then?
Yes, Commissioner Winters, here again, hello. The motion to reopen for the residents. Do I need to give a time limit?
8 minutes would suffice. That's 2 minutes per resident signed up. Yep. And I will go ahead and second that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chinisa, would you mind taking vote?
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Chair Thomasilo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
All right, so the public hearing opens, and similar to last time, I'm going to reserve the applicant till after the neighbors so that we can hear the neighbors and then save time to just ask specific questions to the applicant. So the first neighbor signed up to speak is Amanda Boyd. And if Amanda's on the phone, we have 2 minutes on the clock.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I live at 6945 Smith Court. I'm in opposition of this project. I'm going to repeat what I said last time because half of you guys weren't there. I questioned the area to which these letters were sent. They should have been sent to everyone on Smith Court and Pine Drive because all of us are affected by any increased traffic on Blue Run. I only knew about this meeting because I see the signs on my dog walks. If everyone on Pine Drive and Smith Court were aware of this project, there would be many more people signed up in opposition to it. I also feel that continuing to label it as on Needham Road rather than Blue Run Lane is misleading, and more people would be signed up in opposition if they were aware of this. While the amount of houses has been decreased from the first application for rezoning, I'm still worried about the added traffic to Pine Drive at a location where no stoplight can be added. And if they continue to develop Buffalo Road, it's probably going to end up where we have a right-in, right-out only. So we aren't even going to be able to turn left toward Raleigh. So all of our business is going to end up going toward Knightdale instead of Raleigh. Where was I? Also, if they put the charter school in at the 540 ramp, I mean, traffic is just crazy. I don't even understand why this is being considered when it's inconsistent with your own future land use maps and your future transportation maps. Also, that dashed line, that road is not going to be built anytime soon. It's not there now. One of the other neighbors signed up to speak is probably going to speak about that. Buildings on that property at all right now. It's an exponential increase. When you say it's just going from R4 to R10, it's going from nothing to R10. Sorry, I'm losing my place because I'm adding stuff. Many people in our neighborhood use Blue Run Lane to walk our dogs. So if this project goes forward, can they please at least put a sidewalk from Blue Run to Smith, God, I'm getting all confused. I'm sorry. To Pine Drive.
Okay.
Thank
you, ma'am. Yep. The next up is Deborah White.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. You have 2 minutes.
All right. To build on what Amanda said, we are extremely concerned about the traffic, especially considering there are other proposed developments on the table. I attended a community meeting for development on Needham Road across 540, which will also increase the traffic. I know that the applicant has talked about the fact that Buffalo Road will be 6 lanes eventually, but the problem is it is not 6 lanes now, it is just 2 lanes. We are extremely concerned about the access for emergency services, particularly during peak hours. If we were to need an ambulance or fire department, since we are at the end of Blue Run Lane, we could pretty much forget it during peak hours. Adding 175 homes doesn't sound like a whole lot, but considering that there is nothing there now and Blue Run Lane was not constructed as a residential road, we are very concerned about further congestion and also the fact that there is not a light and will never be a light at the end of Pine Drive. Also concerned about the barriers proposed by the applicant that would adjoin Ms. Poole's land. We feel that these are inadequate to address the fact of the demarcation of the different properties. We have had trouble with trespassers coming up off the Greenway onto Ms. Poole's land, onto the chapel's land, and we feel like this will only increase with additional people living on the land. The other thing I want to mention is the applicant has talked about the Skycrest road extension. Well, this is not going to happen unless Ms. Poole sells her land or my husband and I sell our land. Not going to happen.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Next is Sandra Poole. Ms. Poole is on the line. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Poole, 7100 Blue Run Lane. My farm is adjacent to the Chapel property from I-540 and Blue Run Lane all the way down to the Nish River. I'm speaking today to again voice my concerns about wanting to keep this beautiful agricultural area rural and not filled with townhomes. It will cause traffic congestion for Blue Run Lane and Pine Drive when entering, but especially exiting Pine Drive to turn left onto Buffalo Road. We are too close to the stoplight at I-540 to have a stoplight at Pine Drive. The proposed neighborhood street that has always been mentioned at previous meetings will not be constructed until adjoining properties are sold, and it may take years or possibly never happen. So that shouldn't even be taken into consideration as a fix at this point. I'm just hoping that this traffic congestion doesn't end up causing a fatality. I also ask you to please take into consideration the effects on the wildlife, the environment, and the privacy and other effects on my adjoining property. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for your time and hard work on this case.
Matt, I think you're on mute.
Matt, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to do anything on my end. I think my system had disconnected. But thank you, Ms. Poole. Next up is community member Phil King. Mr. King, if you're on the line, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Planning Commission. I'm Phil King, Sandra Poole's husband at 7100 Blue Run. Depending on how many homes are approved for the Chapel property will directly determine how congested the Pine Drive Buffalo Road intersection will be. Leaving Pine Drive, turning left at Buffalo is not safe now and will be much worse. Everyone knows of places in Raleigh and around Wake County where there have been wreck after wreck, and finally, transportation makes a change and there's improvement. In northern Wake County, near the highway intersection of 401 and 98, there's a crossroads with a history of many wrecks and complaint after complaint about the conditions of the road. Bad visibility because of the lay of the land has usually always been given there as the reason by wreck victims for not failing to see the other person coming. But nothing was ever done. And this has been going on for years. Earlier this year, after a mother and a young child was killed, transportation finally did something to that intersection. They changed it from a two-way stop to a four-way stop with the intention of finally changing it to a traffic circle in the near future. And that all happened within 2 weeks after the mother and child were killed. These townhomes we know are coming. It's just the way Raleigh is. But please, what we want to get across is we want you to please use your influence with the city of Raleigh to fix Buffalo Road and the Pine Drive intersection. We don't want another fatality to happen before they finally end up doing something. And I would like to extend also a special thanks to whoever the lady commissioner was that came out and viewed the property this past Sunday afternoon. I know she could have been using that time, for her family and so forth, but we really want to thank any of the commissioners who came out or has come out during this period of time and to visually see what it's like trying to get out of Pine Drive onto Buffalo. I know that she could visually see what a Monday through Friday is like there. Saturday and Sunday coming in and out of Pine.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we have heard from the public that was signed up to speak. We've heard from transportation staff. I do know that I'm sure that we have some questions for the applicant, but I think in summary, I think a lot of the conditions were updated, but it does seem like there are still some major questions regarding traffic and safety. So opening it up to our fellow commissioners, are there specific questions, issues that you might have right now? Yeah, Commissioner O'Haver.
Thanks, Matt. Jason showed the pie chart and the capacity impacts from going from 10 dwelling units to 6. And it showed a minor change, still using up, I think he said 50+% of the capacity. Did we study what the 6 to the proposed 6 to the underlying 4 does to that capacity?
Jason, are you on the line?
For Jason, yeah.
Yeah.
I can. The underlying 4 uses up much more than 12%. I don't have a number right in front of me. If you remember how that pie chart kind of got smaller, that slice of the pie would get a little bit smaller if it were at 4 units per. Then potential option, but it would bring it down to about 117 units from 177 units, and that would be a corresponding reduction. I'm going to do my math here. 177. What's that?
I was just going to say, sorry, Jason. I was just going to say, it just sort of struck me of how small the change was from 10 to 6. And so I'm just.
It was from 7.5 to 6.
Okay, gotcha. And it brings back again some remembering our last meeting when we were dealing with some other transportation issues, and I think Commissioner Miller suggested for future consideration to really somehow start to look at transportation issues as a whole, so that we're not trying to deal with these very specific issues in a more systematic, on larger failures, I guess. And so obviously there's some, I'm looking at iMaps, there's some weirdness in these roads, but again, I guess my real question is going to the underlying 4 really going to resolve the traffic issues? I don't know, maybe it does.
I don't think I can answer that question in a technical basis. If somebody were to be proposing to rezone this property from a rural residential district or from some county district that would allow very little density to R4, I think we would have a similar issue of plan consistency from a T1.1 perspective, because R4 is denser than rural residential. But we're not looking at that because it already is zoned R4. We're looking at an incremental increase above that to at this point, a 6-unit per acre limit.
Okay, thanks, Jason. I guess I would just would like to hear from the commissioner that went out this weekend and just get their thoughts on what they saw.
So that was me. Jennifer Lampman went to visit the site, and in traveling on Buffalo Road and getting to the 540 interchange, it's clear from the debris on the road that there's several fender benders that occur probably on a regular basis. I do think traffic is a major issue there. Now, of course, I was there on a Sunday during COVID, so not a ton of traffic, but from what I could see, it's pretty apparent that traffic would be backed up for miles. I have, no reason to believe otherwise. And then the Riverwalk subdivision is just down the road a bit. It has been graded. They're prepared for going vertical. I don't know exactly how many homes that are going to be added there, but it looks substantial. At current capacity, I don't think that Buffalo Road is adequate for the development as it exists. The development as currently planned with the Riverwalk and others that are going to be already on deck, and then you're adding this, I have considerable concerns that this particular area is not beefed up enough, lack of a technical term, for additional traffic considerations here. They say that they're going to expand it to 6 lanes, but I can't even see how that is going to be achievable based on the current layout of all of the parcels that are along that line. You know, even using the existing space, if you were to, I don't even know if you'd be able to fit 6 lanes there. I think there would be some eminent domain questions that would go into that, but that's outside my expertise. I will say that I also spoke with the applicant, and I love the product. I love the developer. I think that it's a great plan, and I told them that I think that this particular site is just ahead of its time. I think it's a fantastic development opportunity, but I don't think that the infrastructure is there to support it at all.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Yes, I'd like to reinforce Commissioner Lampman's comments, and I'll actually go further, and I actually don't think the site will ever be appropriate for this type of development. And I don't know if it's possible, but if we pull up that map that Jason Myers had up earlier showing the location of this land in between the Neuse River and the 540 Beltline. I'd like to point to page 19 of the staff report. So the second paragraph says, in accordance with UDO section 8.3.2, the maximum block perimeter for R10 zoning districts is 2,500 feet, and the maximum length for a dead-end street is 300 feet. The current block perimeter for this site is many miles, stretching south to New Bern Avenue and Old Mill Burney Road. Blue Run Lane is currently a dead-end street approximately 0.8 miles in length. Improvement to block perimeter would require an additional crossing of I-540, which is not currently in MAP T5 in the comp plan, and an interchange with Skycrest Drive extension is planned. But even if these things were put in, the resulting block perimeter would still be 6.25 miles on the west side and 4.5 miles on the east side, which still is greatly exceeding the UDO's block perimeter requirements. So it seems like rural development in this area is pretty much what is supported. There's never going to be a street grid crossing the Neuse River and 540 that would provide the ability to connect any neighborhood in this location to other neighborhoods. It's just not a space that makes sense for development, according to the staff report, and I'm convinced of that from that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McIntosh and Commissioner Lampman. Another discussion from Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I would like to see if staff could provide us a brief overview on how transportation infrastructure projects are prioritized, are planned and prioritized throughout the city.
Yeah, a very brief overview of a very complex question. The quick answer is that there isn't a project programmed for Buffalo Road or for this area in the CIP right now. It's often the case that we, just given limited resources, have to come after there's development when there is already a lot of traffic. But in this case, it's a little bit different. Oh, and then another thing I was going to say is that development along a major thoroughfare often builds its section of that, and you'll often see that in places where there is partial development in an area. You'll have a 2-lane street which widens to 4 lanes, which goes back to 2 lanes, and sometimes either a capital project taken on by the city or the state might link those together, or when the entire area develops, it is linked together because of the requirements in our UDO. But in this case, because both the Neuse River and I-540 interchange itself are places that there are no development for, it is right of way, and it is public open space effectively. Those sections would only be through very expensive capital projects that aren't necessarily on the horizon right now, but they are at some point they will come up. I don't think I can speak to that. It really depends on what the NCDOT processes do for their street, but also on what our city council decides to do in the capital improvement program over the next couple budgets. But right now it's not coming. This case wouldn't do any build out on Buffalo Road. And I want to correct one small thing about the record. Buffalo Road is planned to be a 6-lane east of I-540 and a 4-lane elsewhere. There's a little section between Forestville and I-540 that is a higher classification in the comp plan, but in general, it would be a 4-lane. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Miller?
For a large part, yes, but keying in on a main point, having a city for economic development purposes prepare a site with infrastructure to be ready-made for a developer to come in is obviously one strategy around economic development. But usually that's quite expensive and a planned process. Are you saying that typically the development has to come first and then the site can go into the capital improvement program and be eligible to receive?
Yeah, I should have expanded on that a little bit. When we have a need to prioritize our large capital projects, generally road widenings or major complete streets projects, we score those on technical criteria of all the projects that are in the comprehensive plan. And I don't have the number in front of me, but we would have scored this section of Buffalo Road back in 2017 when we developed the 2017 transportation bond package. And then we present to City Council the highest scoring projects for consideration for that funding. What I was getting at was that the volume to capacity ratio, basically the level of congestion, as well as the safety record, are some of the things that we consider most highly for scoring in those things. And that tends to lead towards projects being lagging the development a little bit. It's not that they're ineligible until there's development, it's more that when there is a lot of congestion, a project is the most important project to do. And at this point, this project has not been the most important.
So if this project were to be added, would that in fact potentially move up the road improvements in this area to be a higher priority?
I think that every additional amount of congestion that is added to a place would help that some. Other things that are a part of that scoring system that we've used in the past and would recommend the City Council use in the future are how a project ranks in the pedestrian priority plan or how a project interacts with the transit plans. And those things are things that are not really a priority in this area, partly because it cannot be served by transit effectively and there's no plans to do so, and partly because there aren't a lot of destinations to walk to. But yeah, it is a matter of additional development brings additional traffic and additional people and additional need to do something. But exactly how much that would impact it is a little harder to say. And given the time appears to be approaching transportation bond measures and how the state appears to be developing 5 years before we can consider initiating a project, which would take a couple of years.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. I see Commissioner Bennett has a comment. I also do want to just make sure that we do have time for the applicant, since there are a number of discussion items and questions related to both traffic and some staff presentations, as well as some of the conditions. But Commissioner Bennett, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. I was going to echo what Commissioner McIntosh said. I agree that this may be a great project, and I too have talked to the applicant, and I know they've made a good faith effort to address some of the concerns, but I just don't think the project is right for this area. I lived off of Forestville Road for about 10 years, so it's very close to Buffalo. I'm quite familiar with this area and with the traffic during the peak and off-peak. And I would hate to vote for something hoping that maybe traffic improvements come after it's developed and possibly after someone is killed out there. So because I don't feel like the infrastructure is there, I don't feel like this development is appropriate for that area, I don't think the network can be improved in such a way to make it appropriate, I don't think I would be able to support this.
Okay, thank you. I now, after we've had some robust discussion and staff input, I do want to open it up, give the applicant their 8 minutes to speak as well. So if Mr. Mills is on the phone, then we'll go ahead and you have the committed 8 minutes as well. You can use whatever you want, and then we'll probably ask you questions.
Thank you very much. Good morning. This is Worth Mills with Longleaf Law Partners. I have a presentation that I sent over as well. If we could pull that up, it's got some helpful slides as it relates to the traffic analysis that we performed with the changes in density. Can somebody help get that pulled up, please?
I don't think, this is Bynum, I don't think I have that. It's going to take me a minute to find that.
I sent that to Don last week. One of the things that we wanted to touch on, one, we did reduce the density down from 7 units an acre to 6.5 units an acre in order to provide a more appropriate density transition to our adjacent properties. Upon further analysis from McAdams, we have altered our stormwater and impervious surface requirements so that we are providing a very robust to the Neuse River and to the surrounding area at large. If you could please go to slide 9. Thank you very much. This slide just shows, sorry, if you could go back one. There's a slide that shows nearby townhome developments. As you can see, there are 5 within the general vicinity of the site. So just to reinforce the fact that this type of development is common in this area, and it is an appropriate building type for areas around the 540 corridor. The slide that you're looking at right now is updated analysis from Ramey Kemp. As you can see, of the multiple intersections that were studied in our TIA, the yellow bar graph shows the current estimated time delays with the current zoning, and the blue graph shows the estimated waiting times with the proposed zoning. As you can see, the changes from the R4 to the R10 conditional use with 6 units per acre is extremely minor, and all of those intersections operate at an acceptable level of service as dictated by the City of Raleigh standards. And so we would say that the infrastructure is adequate, what is in place to support this new development. And I think, sorry, I'm just trying to, if you could go to the next slide, please. One more. Yep, and these highlight the updated zoning conditions, again, with the reduced density. Next slide, please. This slide shows kind of the area of development with the various buffers in place. We have the 800-foot buffer from the City of Raleigh property just to the west of us, and we have the south. And this just better shows, where within the site these townhomes will be located. I want to turn over the rest of our time to Mr. Chappell, the current property owner. He didn't have a chance to speak on June 30th, so I'd like to give him enough time to speak.
Thank you.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, good morning. I'm Doug Chappell. My siblings and I are the owners of the property being discussed this morning. The specific portion that we're talking about, as you can see from the map, is located on the west side of Interstate 540. And I want to thank you for allocating me this time to talk about it. As we've referenced before, with the ongoing influx of more than 65 people moving into Wake County every day, there's a high demand for housing, and reports in the last few weeks are that the supplies continue to drop dramatically. Now, as you know, the city of Raleigh has already made major infrastructure investments near this project. In fact, right at the west end of it, including major sewer truck line, beautiful greenways for its citizens to enjoy. And the city of Raleigh actually owns acreage, as was just referenced, at the immediate west end of this property along the Neuse River. This project would generate valuable additional revenue for the city of Raleigh. In today's world, farm rent and small farms like this property and that of the adjoining property of the Lewises and the Pools for the production of trees, cattle feed, soybeans, and tobacco pays only a fraction of the property tax each year. This project would lead to a higher market valuations for crop as is being planned, and therefore beneficial to any and all landowners desiring to sell at a later date. Now, so there's no misunderstanding. Yes, my siblings and I would benefit from the sale of this property, but we also support attainable housing for our neighbors. We have seen that this developer builds quality product, as I personally have been and talked with, visited with homeowners in the area that have been built by this particular organization. We're confident that this development, as it proceeds, that the developer will respect and protect, as they've just shown you in a graph, the property of the neighbors as they should. And finally, I want to thank the city staff and the Planning Commission who are working with this project for their time and effort. And in closing, I respectfully ask the commission members for their support. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mills, you still have a little over a minute left. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I'll just sum up that this opportunity to redevelop or to develop this land would increase the amount of workforce housing for the many folks that are looking for affordable housing in the city of Raleigh. It would locate that housing near a major access corridor at Buffalo Road to ease folks getting in and around the city. And as we have shown in the updated traffic impact analysis, infrastructure that is currently in place, the current zoning as well as the zoning that we have proposed. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions, and we would respectfully ask that you recommend approval for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Jake with the developer. I have a couple of quick, and I'll keep them short. I just want to add to some back data. So in our traffic study, 5 years worth of crashes at the intersections of Pine Drive, Buffalo Road, and 540, both eastbound and westbound ramps. There were only 98 incidents in a 5-year period, of which 62% of those were rear ends, and 93 of those 98 all were on the eastbound and westbound intersections. So the overwhelming majority of traffic incidents that are happening out there are happening at the signalization on the off-bound ramps of 540, which would not be impacted by this project. The other thing I want to note that is something maybe you can clarify is...
Sir?
Yep.
We're actually up with the 8 minutes, but I think that if we have questions, that we can that we can certainly follow up with, but do appreciate that additional information.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we've heard from the public, we've heard from the applicant, we've heard from transportation staff, we've heard from other commissioners. You know, it does sound like fellow commissioners have some real hesitation. I will say I'm trying to think through this logically because I do agree that this is, you know, housing that's needed. I have actually gone by there as well. And I guess what I'm struggling with a little bit is if it were agricultural land, it would be very cut and dry. But the fact that right now, by right, anyone can build, the owner can build to 4 units per acre. I guess I'm just, you know, and that without any conditions, any protections in place, that's where I'm, you know, where I'm a little bit challenged. I fully respect the wishes of the commission, but I guess I'm looking at this as detached homes at 4 units per acre versus attached townhomes at 6 units, and along with the conditions. And so that's the way I'm kind of looking at it. It might not be the way that everyone's looking at it, but I do welcome discussion, questions to the applicant or to the neighbors, and what our decision is if we do want to make a motion if we don't want to make a motion today, we have to vote for extension. Are there other discussion? Yeah, Commissioner Miller.
I had a question for the developer. One of the challenges that I think we all face with some of these issues related to traffic are that we have anecdotal information from the neighbors, and then we have a TIA determination and some additional sort of actual data and facts to analyze in the staff reports, and sometimes they don't seem to match up. Sometimes, you know, it says that the TIA determination is that this would not trigger a traffic impact analysis, and at the same time we hear from neighbors anecdotally that they're concerned about traffic. So I'm interested in getting sort of as much data as we can, number one, and then number two, guidance from staff and experts on how to resolve some of those issues. And so I guess my first question would be for the developer. I know they were going through some of the data related to the traffic incident reports in the area, and I was going to see if he could provide some additional, if he had any additional comments about the data there.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Miller. We have Caroline Bajarski with Ramey Kemp on the line as well. I believe that she is available to speak. And so if we could unmute her, I believe that she would be the best person to provide the context for this updated TIA graphs.
Hello, everyone. My name, as Worth mentioned, is Caroline Bojarski. I am a professional engineer with Ramey Kemp & Associates, and we performed a traffic impact analysis based on NCDOT.
Ma'am, you're going in and out a little bit.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
This particular development did not require a traffic study, but the developers, due to the neighborhood concerns, hired us to go ahead and still conduct the traffic study.
Ma'am, you just cut out again.
Following the city of Raleigh and NCD.
Ma'am, you're cutting out a lot.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you fine, and then all of a sudden you kind of fade out.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, you're good right now.
As was mentioned, the per City of Raleigh guidelines, we did a crash analysis, and I know that Jay went through that the majority of the crashes were rear end crashes at the 540 ramps. We performed this study before the fatal crash at Pine Drive in Buffalo that was mentioned by a neighbor. So that was not included.
You just cut out again.
However, can you hear me now?
Yep. No.
Okay. One other item that I did want to. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I did want to point out that.
I just don't think it's. I don't think it's
impact
working.
Analysis study to build out here of.
Ma'am.
Can I try to call in?
I mean, yeah. Why don't you talk to Ray about that, and we can have a discussion because that wasn't working. So let me turn back to the commissioners quickly while they're figuring that out. Do we have some other discussion items, knowing that? Yeah, Commissioner O'Haver.
Sorry, Matt. I was just going to see if Jason had some time to figure that analysis to kind of get back to your point about R4 by right versus R6. And I think that someone had mentioned. I want some clarity. And I'm sorry I had to miss this initial conversation on the 30th just due to timing. But I think the developer said that it was, or maybe Worth said that it was going from 7 units to 6.5, and I'm reading on the report it says 7.5 to 6. Can I get clarity on that, and then see if Jason had time to provide any input on the difference between the underlying zoning versus the proposed?
Well, and real quick, let me just kind of cut in. It is 7.5 to 6. I will confirm that. I can't recollect what Jason noted and studied, but I think that just from our learnings over the past few meetings and trying to not deal with things that we don't have answers to at the table, it does sound like that we need additional data. We need some additional analysis from this that we're not going to get today. And so I'm actually leaning towards just deferring this case so that we are making a decision off of information that is important that we don't have right now, unless people are comfortable moving it forward. But at this point in time, I think that we're getting into questions that we are not going to have answers to today. And so I would recommend either we make a motion or we a motion to move it forward or to defer at this point in time. But I would I would suggest that we add a little bit additional time. Right. Commissioner Fox?
I have one question, and then I support that statement. I do believe we are going to have to defer this one, but one question for either Mr. Belk or Mr. Bowers. If you could help me out a little bit. So the staff report did find the case consistent with expanding housing choices, but inconsistent with managing our growth, coordinating land use and transportation, and growing successful neighborhoods. Do you have examples of conditions which would bring the case more into consistency in relationship to those currently inconsistent policies?
And I guess maybe
this is Ken. I was waiting to see if Don Belk was going to chime in as the author of staff report. Not right off the top of my head would I be in a position to propose conditions specifically addressing those issues, but if you wanted staff to provide that information, if a decision is not going to be made today, we could certainly do so.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I would like to make a motion to defer this case. Just want to clarify, is 30 days sufficient, or do we need 60?
Your extension is part of your motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that depends on 30 days would be sufficient if you believe that the outstanding information can be gathered for within the next couple of weeks.
And I suppose that would depend on the authors of that data and if they can put that together. So.
Commissioner Chair Tomasula.
Yeah.
So I think Commissioner Fox probably covered what my question was, but am I reading this correct in that the case is both inconsistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan? And I think the answer was yes, and if so, I would also be interested in having some feedback on how this could be brought more into consistency with either of those. Thank you.
And I guess I'd just follow on that. I'm curious if the current zoning of R4 is inconsistent with the future land use map and the comp plan. For context and interpretation by staff.
I'm also curious, Jason, I'm not sure exactly how the traffic counts are being calculated. If it's being calculated off of the benchmark today versus, an R4 or an R6, I think that that's going to be one number, but I'm wondering if we can have an overall proposed development traffic count change after Riverwalk and after the other. I think there's one other development that's going to be going out there. And I know that those are adding substantial housing. So if we can look at what it is today, that's going to be a different forecast. And I think it's important that we look at that.
Yes, been reviewed by city staff. It's not something that we have the resources to look at absent a code requirement or a request by Planning Commission. If Planning Commission wants us to review that, we'll make sure it follows our procedures, which it may, and that we will take those things into account and can provide some information. It appears as if what they were reporting was a difference between a 4 units per acre of single family homes and the 6 units per acre of townhouses, which is not a large difference. And I didn't see anything in their slides about what the level of delay would be at the current condition, which is something we would require to be studied as a part of a normal TIA.
I think that that's important. And again, I would like to stress this point is there are 2 other developments, and I know Riverwalk is one, I can't remember the other one, that will be adding substantial traffic in that area. And I don't think that that potential is being included in the analysis as well. And I think it's important that we look at it holistically. I think that this is a major issue and not a minor one.
Thank you. And I think perhaps to summarize a little bit, I think that, to the neighbors and those in opposition, we hear you and we are taking the location of this very seriously. To the applicant, we really appreciate the continued work that you're doing on this. But I think that sometimes traffic, is something that is out of an applicant's control. But at this point, because it is a dead end, because there is one in, one out, and there has been some recent updates that we were not familiar with that intersection, that I think that we have to take this very seriously. And I think that a deferment is important so that we can really understand what we're making decisions on. So if there's no other questions or comments, we do have a motion on the table. Commissioner O'Haver, was that?
I'll second the motion. I was going to make a motion. I didn't realize we had one on the table. So I'll second the motion to defer for how many days did we decide we needed?
How long does staff need?
I believe we need 60.
Okay.
Okay.
This is Lampman again. I'm really sorry to add this one other one. Can we have additional clarification on the extension? I'm not certain if Blue Run was going to be extended or if there's a possibility of it being extended. And then also with the Skylar, I agree. I don't think that particular one is going to be achievable, but is Blue Run achievable? I think that there needs to be also discussion on what is the extension of that road and if there's a timeline, which I have opinions on that, but not relevant. If we can provide clarity though on extensions of those roads.
Thank you. And I will just encourage all commissioners to follow up perhaps after this meeting to both staff, both Don and Jason, and any other staff members that you'd like to follow up to with specific questions to get in front of them so that they can include this in their analysis going forward. Are there any other questions or comments around this? We do have a motion and a second. Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
I will just say that I'm prepared to vote today. I don't know what other information could come that would make me change my mind. And I want to, not sure I want to say this, I want to feel like we're being fair to the applicant as well as to the residents. It feels a little bit like we're bending over backwards to make this work for the applicant. And I'd like to feel like we're giving the same weight to the neighbor concerns as well. Sometimes a rezoning want to feel like anytime we're not in favor of back and forth until we make it work for the applicant. Nothing against the applicant. They've done a lot of good work, but sometimes it's just a no. And I don't feel like we have to draw things out to make it a yes, because I feel like that's not fair to the residents who are also bringing us good information. Would we, give them the same consideration that we're giving the applicant? So I'm ready to vote today.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to make we have a current motion on the table. Was there any other discussion that would, Commissioner O'Haver?
Yes, and I appreciate Commissioner Bennett's comments and respect those. I just would like to add that I genuinely feel like I don't have enough information, and maybe it's because I missed the first meeting, and so if that's the case, I apologize, but I certainly hear and understand your comments. But for me personally, I'm just not certain I have enough information, and so I just wanted to add that. So,
I will share that I don't think that I'm in a deferral or that I'm trying to make this work. I actually don't think it will work, and I'm thinking that once we come up with the traffic information, I think that we're going to see an extreme level of congestion, and I have real concerns about that. And so I'm looking for basically getting all the information out on the table, and then we can make a vote. But I mean, Commissioner Bennett, if we were to vote today, I know what my vote would be. But I do think that this traffic is if we're looking for additional information, I think that that report will come back very heavy in terms of change of flow. So, my perspective.
Commissioner McIntosh.
Back to Commissioner O'Haver. I know you weren't on the commission at that point, but I just want to remind the commission we actually have had several discussions on this, including a very lengthy discussion at Committee of the Whole. At least once, and possibly more. I apologize, I don't remember specifically, but there have been a number of discussions, and we've seen the present. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
So, are we prepared to? I guess we formally have to vote on the deferment. Mm-hmm. Is that correct, or can someone make another motion?
The only thing I can make one other point. I think
Lampman, Can you just raise your hand before you speak, just so that we can, okay, Commissioner Lampman?
I think that also if we send this through to council right now, as is, I think that they're going to also have more subjectivity to it. without some of these data points. I think if we're able to get the data points, then they'll feel more comfortable, because if we have a split vote, then they're going to vote on what the information is that they have. So that's my only other point for approving the deferral.
That's a good point. Mr. Miller?
Regarding the motion on the table, I wanted to just clarify the number of days. I know that was an open question. It looks like the deadline was actually July 26th. So if we added 30 days, that would only make it to August 25th, which is the next meeting. And I wanted to see from staff if they would have time, how much time they need to review the TIA and come up with the answers about the traffic counts as between R4 and R6 with conditions.
Well, 30 days is clearly not enough. I don't know if Jason is still here to talk about the review of the TIA.
Would 60 days be enough? 60 days would put us
I believe that 60 days
September
would be enough
24th.
to be able to review the TIA and write some amount of staff report. Generally, we plan for 30 days after a submittal to staff before we can complete that. I can't speak for my colleagues, Bobby Kroom's time to that, but I would expect that 60 days should be able to get you what you need.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we have a motion on the table, fully acknowledging Commissioner Bennett's comments. Thank you for those, and Commissioner Lampman's and McIntosh. We now will go ahead and take a vote for the extension for 60 days. And I guess this is just in the context that we are looking for the specific information so that we have information in front of us that's moving forward to council, that's reliable. I think at this point we fully understand a lot of the very serious concerns and issues pressing this site and the street and access, and expect for the next time for us to be able to review this information and move forward swiftly. So, as far as that goes, Janitha, if you're ready, if you can take vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Nay.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Nay.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Nay.
All right, so the extension passes 6-3, and we will hear this again with reviewed TIA information and any other requests that commissioners have for that to staff in a few months. Moving on to item E4. This is case number Z5019. This is a request to rezone less than a quarter acre of land from residential 10 with special parking overlay district to neighborhood mixed use 3 stories with this special residential parking overlay district. This request has appeared on previous meeting agendas, although it has not been discussed. Hannah Reckow will present on behalf of the city.
Good morning. So as the chair mentioned, this is an old business item, but the first time it's been discussed, so I'll go over an overview of the request. Z5019 is request to rezone just under a quarter of an acre from R10 to NX3. The area also has a special residential parking overlay district, which the request would keep as is. The rezoning site is 913 Method Road. As you can see in the surrounding area, properties on the east side of Method Road are zoned NX3. Properties on the west side are largely R10, and there's an OX district farther north on Method Road. The Planning Commission deadline for action is August 25th.
Okay.
So for some more context, this is west of downtown, just before the interchange of Western Boulevard and I-440. The site is adjacent to a shopping center where Food Lion is located. And as you can see, part of the NC State campus extends north of this site. There's also a residential neighborhood to the west. If you look at a close-up, you can see that the site does back up directly to the shopping center. The next slides show some views of the site. It has a relatively small frontage on Method Road, and there's the detached house currently located on the parcel. This request is for a general use district, so there are no conditions offered. And when we look at the existing versus proposed zoning, there are a few major changes, moving from a residential district to a mixed use district. So the cap on density residential units would be removed. Uses not permitted in R10, such as office and retail and other commercial uses, that would be permitted in an NX district. So in the future land use, the request for NX3 is consistent with that designation. On the urban form map, the rezoning site has several designations: transit-oriented district and core transit area. These have to do with the proximity to the transit emphasis corridor along Western Boulevard, where ERT service is planned. These designations recommend either an urban or a hybrid frontage be applied to support a pedestrian-friendly urban form in an area that's close to transit service. The request does not include a frontage, so for that reason, it is inconsistent with the urban form map. Overall, though, the request is consistent with the 2030 comprehensive plan, including the future land use map designation of neighborhood mixed use. The next slide shows a list of policies that the request is consistent with. Many of these have to do with compatibility with the surrounding area and capitalizing on the proximity of transit. The next slide shows a few of the inconsistent policies. These refer back to the urban form guidance and the recommendation that a frontage be applied, as well as the requested district permitting some vehicle-oriented uses in a TOD area. And there are no outstanding issues. Your deadline for action is the date of your next regularly scheduled meeting, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Hannah. Moving on, we will now hear from the applicant. Allison Pockett will present on behalf of the applicant. As a reminder, the applicant and all those in support have 10 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Allison Pockett, and I'm a landscape architect. My client actually owns this parcel and the parcel immediately to the south of this parcel. For some reason, this parcel was left as 10. It's been totally surrounded by the zoning that they are requesting. So it seems as though it was kind of left out. The two parcels actually have houses on them. They were built, one was built in 1948, the other in 1951. They're both kind of in poor condition. At this point, they do not know what they intend to do with this property, but having the two pieces be two different zonings poses an interesting problem. They do back up to a center. Immediately to the north is a religious service organization. So it's not really a residential area on this side of the street. Across the street, there are definitely a row of houses. I don't think anybody else has even signed up. I know no one came to the neighborhood meeting. So that I might be done.
Okay. Thank you very much for your for the applicant. So there is no one else signed up. Do any commissioners have any questions for staff or for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'm actually just going to go ahead and move approval for this. The case is C5019 is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan, and seems to kind of be somewhat just updating one lot amidst the rest of the zoning to be congruous with that full block. So there's a motion to approve. Commissioner Lampman? Second?
Second.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. There's a motion and a second. I will now ask Janitha to roll call for members on their vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
All right, so the motion passes unanimously 9-0. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item E5, case number Z420. This is a request to rezone approximately 2 acres of land from residential 4 and residential 6 with special residential parking overlay district to residential mixed use 3 stories with special residential parking overlay district. This request has appeared on previous agendas, although it has not been discussed. If recommendation is not made on this case today, a time extension will be required. Sarah Ellis will present on behalf of city staff.
Hey, good morning, everyone. The Z420 this is the first time you're hearing this case. This is a request to rezone just over 2 acres on a single parcel located at 1701 Trailwood Drive. It's located right behind the NC State Centennial Campus, just for a little perspective. And your deadline for Planning Commission action is August 24th, 2020. Between R4, which is the majority of the parcel in the lighter yellow shading, and R6, which is that little sliver you see in the bottom corner of it. And then the entire site does contain the special residential parking overlay district. The conditions retaining that special residential parking overlay district. I'm ready for the next slide at any time. Okay, so the site is located off Trailwood Drive, about maybe a half a mile north of I-40. Again, I mentioned it's located right behind NC State's Centennial Campus, and it's pretty close to the Centennial Campus Middle School. It's in a generally residential neighborhood. It is located next to a fire station, which is sort of the only departure from the residential development in that immediate area. So it's characterized by a mixture of low density residential and then some moderate density residential as you get closer to 40. Looking into the site, it is an undeveloped forested lot right now. So I showed a couple different views looking in from Trailwood on image 1 and 2. It's looking in from Trailwood Drive to the site. And then on image 3, as you can see on that indicator map in the top left-hand corner, that's looking in from the back of the site on Crump Road, which there's a Crump Road, which is a small road that continues down to the bottom of the site and terminates around where the site touches NC State Centennial Campus. And I'm ready for the next slide at any time.
Are we having issues? Ray or Bynum?
Yeah, let me check.
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Sorry, Bonham's computer froze. He's working on it.
Okay, thanks for the verbal update. We need some elevator music or something.
I know the score to Hamilton.
I would love that. I've watched that too many times.
Probably shouldn't use anything copyrighted.
Good point.
Do we think that we'll get it back up, or should we?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
My computer is just having like a, it's being a little persnickety, so let's see if we can get it to catch back up.
Okay. So the request again is to rezone from R4 and R6 with special residential parking overlay district to RX with the special residential parking overlay district. It would permit a large increase in the residential units in the area. So today, the site could be developed at an approximate density of just under 4 units per acre, sorry. If the request is approved, it would permit up to approximately 25 units per acre, which would yield around about 54 units in total on the site. It would also permit a small amount of retail to be built on the bottom of an apartment building type. So that would be a small retail that can be located at the corner in a bottom of apartment unit. Apartment building type. And that would be something like an equivalent of a cell phone store or a similar type of business. And the request to move from R6 and R4 to RX would also decrease the setbacks on all sides. And I'm ready for the next slide anytime. Thanks. Okay, and so the request is inconsistent with the future land use map designation of low density residential, in that low density residential envisions a residential density of 1 to 6 units per acre, and it doesn't envision retail. So those are the inconsistencies there. It's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan overall, and again with the future land use map. The policies that it is consistent with are compact development, as it would increase the density of permitted housing in that area, zoning for housing, as it would permit a large increase in the number of housing units permitted, and it would also be consistent with no single family units on major streets, as it's on Trailwood Drive. The inconsistent policies, again, are the future land use map, reinforcing the urban pattern, infill development, infill compatibility, and the inconsistency there is generally related to a large departure from the existing character in the area. And this would also require a future land use map amendment if it was approved. I'm ready for the next slide at any time. Deadline for action again is August 24th, 2020. And this does require a future land use map amendment, which would change the future land use map from its current designation as low density residential to medium density residential. And here's a map displaying what that change would look like in the area. So again, it would change it from low density residential to medium density residential if the rezoning from R4 and R6 to RX with no conditions were approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now we will hear from the applicant. Anderson Marlowe will present on behalf of the applicant. As a reminder, the applicant and all those in support have 10 minutes to speak.
Oh, we were going to go second. Yeah. Hey, good morning. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak. I won't take long. The only thing I would like to say is what we're trying to do and what we want to do is construct townhomes on the project. Right now, it does say apartments, but our goal would be to do townhomes. The area is in dire need of some moderately priced homes in that area. And we met with the previous commissioner for that area, and he expressed the need for these type of housing. We are going for this zoning to try to maximize the number of units we can get. Right now, it looks like it would be certainly less than what the numbers show. We would guess it would be 15 to 16, 18 units, something in that range. But it needs to be a larger density with the fire station right next door. We certainly can't go in there and build one single family home next to a fire station fronting Trailwood. That would not be the goal. The cost would be prohibitive. And once the land is subdivided, the city is requiring us to improve Trailwood Drive as well as Tanager. So the cost to improve, give them the right-of-ways they're asking for, widen Trailwood, improve the south side of Tanager, bring sewer down from the other side of the fire station is just so cost prohibitive. I've owned the property for probably pushing 15 years now, and it just has never been able to pencil from a single family perspective. And with the split zoning, it's got to be rezoned anyway. So we're hoping you will take all that into consideration and support us from that perspective. That's really all I have to say about it at the moment.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Excuse me, we do have one member of the public signed up to speak in opposition. So that member will have 2 minutes to speak, and that is Stephen Hall.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Here's our presentation. The first thing we want to say is that I am representing a great number of neighbors who are on via YouTube and other. We had 40 people at the last meeting. And first thing to say is really just thank you to Sarah for a good presentation. The request is inconsistent with future land use map and the comprehensive plan. But it's also a little bit unique that this Trailwood community is a very green community. You can see that it's actually cohesive space in here. Really a wonderful blessing to the Raleigh community itself. Next slide, please. And basically it is almost all R2 and a little bit of R4. The piece of property that it's, I think, appropriately zoned presently R4 and R6, transitions to R6 on the other side. Next slide, please. And you can see this picture similar to Sarah's. It does just jump out at you as something that is quite inconsistent. Next slide, please. Here's recent homes in the area, very green, preserve a lot of vegetation, very, very low. A lot of these homes are 3 to 5% impervious, so it's a really great benefit water-wise. Next slide, please. Again, this picture, it is immediately adjacent to R2 on the upper side and the fire station on the lower side, and everything's R4, R6. So it is appropriately zoned as is. Next slide, please. It is a lovely green area. Next slide, please. It backs up to Centennial Campus. Here's some neighbors, single-family homes. There is the fire station, lower left. It's a beautiful little structure, kind of a single, blends in, very green itself. There to the right is the housing on the far side in the R6 zone. You can see how green that is. And that's, I think, 8 or 10 units there on the right-hand side. Could do something potentially similar on the left and the middle school. Next slide, please. And here are, well, just a response to Mr. Anderson. Here are houses that are all within or even immediately adjacent to, but all within a block of Raleigh fire stations, lovely homes. You can do this. In fact, people seem pretty happy about it. Now, fire stations are good neighbors. Next, please. On the other hand, packing people in an area where actually there are a lot of unrented houses doesn't seem consistent. Again, inconsistent with the future land use in the comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. Some of the side effects can, again, be kind of painful, unhealthy, and honestly dangerous. Next slide, please. Again, lots of very high density housing that's about half a mile away. This is a really nice green area, and we're just asking for just a legitimate transition. And really the current zoning is correct. Next slide, please. Lots of traffic, we've talked about that. Next slide, please. Basically, it's inappropriate spot zoning. There is not any obvious community benefit. He can, in fact, and I've done a little homework on this, I believe it could be developed and make a decent profit. I think he wants to make more than a decent profit. Basically, every meeting that has been held has had essentially unanimous opposition. We checked on the last meeting just to confirm, and indeed, people are consistently opposed. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the speaker has run out of time.
Okay. Final slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And I will say, and maybe this is to talk about later, just because the gentleman wrote representing a neighborhood, I wanted to extend some time. Maybe there's a way that we can better think about that in the future, just knowing that there are a handful of other people and with one representative similar to the applicant. So thank you, Steve. So now I'd like to allow questions and comments from the commissioners for either staff, the applicant, or the neighbor. Anyone have any specific questions or comments right now? Commissioner Hicks.
Thank you, Chair Tomasulo. I had a housekeeping question. How are we handling cases that are double inconsistent? It used to be that they would go into committee of the whole. I think this case is doubly inconsistent, and I don't know if we're still doing that, but I just wanted to ask the question.
Well, we haven't. Yeah, I mean, traditionally, I guess for commissioners that are new, it was standard that we would send double inconsistent cases directly into committee of the whole. Since that had not been operational since February, we have not had that option. And I was just it is a very good point, and you know, I also just don't. It also is a general use case as well. So there isn't any conditions that help guide any of what has been discussed as well. So I do think that we have a number of options that we can take. I think we could put it into committee of the whole, although I think we do have a lot in there. This is a generally small case. You know, I'll just kind of maybe speak and then people can respond. I do see where there is, you know, R2, R4, and R6 zoning. adjacent. There is also additional townhomes adjacent as well. I will, as far as land use goes, anything over R4 or R6 will be inconsistent because in the remapping, R4 and R6 future land uses were mapped to the existing. And so pretty much every case that we have that's R4, R6, I will just remind all commissioners that there generally was never a future land use mapped. It was just the applied zoning was applied as the future land use, just for context. That's not positive or negative. It's just the way that the decision was made. And so, I know that, I guess I have questions why RX versus just R10 with the existing zoning, with the existing acreage. You could still get 14 or 15 units on there. With the existing zoning, the site could be clear cut. If that's a worry, there could be some tree protection included as conditions. There could be other accommodations. I guess I'm just kind of confused. It seems like, I guess I just don't want to have I don't want to waste our time or the applicant's time or the neighbor's time. If it seems like there hasn't been any real conversations and it's double inconsistent, we either move forward with a vote or put it into committee of the whole. And I guess I do have one other question for the applicant. Have you met with any of the neighbors around these, any concerns that they have? It does seem like that they have a number of concerns. Mr. Marlowe?
Yes.
Yes. Have you had any meetings with the surrounding neighbors at all?
We just had one meeting, and it was about 5 or 6 months ago. I think it was back last fall. Anyway, we had one meeting. We were required to notify the surrounding neighbors, and I think it was 12 to 16 we notified. And then we had a meeting at the community center in that area. That's the only meeting that has been had.
So you've had the required meetings, but you haven't been in touch with any neighbors beyond the required meetings?
Not the neighbors since then, but
okay.
We were in touch with Mr. Martin. And as far as the zoning that we asked for, we are, at the time there was some question as to whether R10 would do the townhomes. We are willing to go that route if it need be, whatever we need to do to restrict it to the townhomes. But, I don't know if that needs to be discussed today or another time.
Okay, thank you for that. At this point, I really don't want to, since we're not going to be able to apply any conditions or change a rezoning, I think that, we basically can either vote in favor or against, or send it to committee of the whole, or I guess hold it at the table with a request to the applicant. Ken or Travis, correct me if I'm wrong. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or feelings towards this? I'm just seeing that there's a lot of gaps right now.
To do what?
For me to get comfortable with this, at least. No other comments or questions? Commissioner Miller?
I just wanted to thank the applicant and neighbors and you as well, Chair Tomasulo. I have the same concerns that you have. It sounds like there's no conditions being offered, but as part of the rezoning request, but the applicant may generally be open to the idea of that, but at this time they're not offered, so we can't consider them at this time. So I'm with you on, as the case currently stands, it's difficult to move forward with this case given the concerns of the neighbors and the lack of conditions being offered.
Reminder that deadline for planning commission action is August 24th. Your next regular meeting is August 25th. And if you act today, obviously, then you're well within that time frame. If you wish to consider it longer, you may need to, on the 25th, ask for a time extension. And I think the main consideration in front of you is if the applicant is willing to substantially change the case in some way, they would need additional time to do that, whether to convert it to an R10 zoning or to add conditions to the RX3 that they've already requested, and probably additional time to meet with the neighbors to determine what sort of conditions they might offer. So I think that's basically it. If for some reason this case moves forward with a recommendation for denial and the council agrees with that recommendation when they hold the public hearing, then in order for the case to be refiled, the applicant would either have to wait for 2 years or would have to seek a waiver of the 2-year waiting period, claiming that it would be a substantially different case, which is if it were switched from to add significant conditions or to go to R10, that would probably meet that test. But it would be an additional procedural hurdle in front of them.
Okay, thank you, Ken. I mean, I mean, maybe I can see if nods from everybody, though what I'm leaning towards, and we can find out the time horizon, but the fact that the applicant, Mr. Marlowe, one, is a longtime landowner of this, and as the applicant, and two, is willing to make significant changes, I would be willing to make the request for him to make the changes that are the minimum to allow what he feels like he needs on the site, as well as a request to meet with the neighbors or hop on the call with neighbors to hear about, if willing, I'd just be curious if there's any ways that he could just hear some concerns that he could potentially mitigate. And it might be worth talking to staff or to some of the commissioners, although no one really has had any real comments. But, you know, I would say that at minimum, it seems like moving from RX to R10, if that makes sense and you can still meet your needs, as well as having a conversation with your neighbors to understand, you know, where their needs might be, I think would be a request that I have. Commissioner Miller?
Would the applicant like the additional 2 weeks to try and develop some additional conditions and meet with the neighbors?
We won't get it, I don't think, in time.
Gotcha. I'm just trying to, I know that the process, if you hire attorneys, it can be more helpful to like guide them through the process, but if someone's working on their own and might not know what some of these procedural requirements might be, I want to just, and might have just learned about them now. I just want to know if then that's a different issue. But I just wanted to know, does the applicant want additional time?
Mr. Marlowe?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we would certainly like additional time to discuss that. We'd be glad to. I don't know if we can get a neighborhood meeting together in that length of time, but I would certainly be willing to come back with the exact rezoning limitations I could reduce it to.
Okay, and I think at minimum, Mr. Hall would be a great representative to speak to, even if over the phone.
Yeah, and we'll be glad to. We've tried to discuss it over the years, and we've just got negative reaction to it. But I'm willing to try again, more than willing to try again. And a lot of his concerns that he put up there, the parking, this, that, and the other, all that would be restricted to my property. We would make sure all that conforms for sure. So, yes, I'd be glad to do that.
This is Commissioner Winters. With that, I would also like to add that just yesterday, hindsight, but District D had their monthly meeting, so that was an opportunity to meet with residents at large, as well as with the current City Council member, Stormy Fort. So as you're meeting with residents, maybe it's also a good idea to engage the current council person, and maybe even help facilitate a meeting within this short time span?
We're meeting tomorrow with the current council person that is taking Sage Martin's place. So we already have that scheduled.
Good to know. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Barring Commissioner Miller?
I wanted to add, you might also meet with the staff person assigned to this case. And it sounds like there's a number of restrictions, as you refer to them, that you're willing to abide by, and just learning more about the process on how to actually enter those as official conditions to the rezoning request.
All right.
Great.
Yes, yes, I'm fine. I would like the time to do that, yes.
Okay. So I'll just suggest that the commission may wish to report out to the council request for a 60-day time extension on this case. If you wait till your next meeting to do it, the clock will have run out. If for any reason the council does not grant it, then you will not be able to consider the case at all. If you'll get an answer a week from today on the grant of the time extension, and then be able to plan accordingly your continued review of the case.
Okay, great. Thank you. I guess with that, I will just make a motion to grant a 60-day time extension so that we can hear updates to the request, and allow time to meet with staff and additional time to meet with neighbors and the city councilor. There's a motion on the table.
A second.
Okay, Commissioner Hicks seconds. So now if Chinitha, if you can go ahead and take roll call.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Excuse me. Ooh, okay. Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
All right, so the deferment for 60 days is approved unanimously, 9-0. We will now move on to item E6. This is case number Z720. This is a request to rezone approximately 3 acres of land from residential 4 to commercial mixed use 3 stories, parking limited, conditional use. This request has appeared on previous meeting agendas, although it has not been discussed. If a recommendation is not made on this case today, a time extension will be required. Hannah will now present on behalf of the city.
Good morning. So this is Z720. It's a request to rezone approximately 2.9 acres from residential 4 to commercial mixed use 3 stories, parking limited, conditional use. The rezoning site is 1200 and 1204 East Millbrook Road. You can see the general area. This is located near the intersection of Falls of Neuse Road and East Millbrook Road. There's a variety of commercial and office uses located closer to the intersection and along Falls of Neuse Road, and the larger site to the northwest and south is a low-density residential area. Next slide shows a close-up. I can see it shows a boundary with the shopping center to the east, and then it shows a boundary with 5 parcels to the south and 2 residential parcels to the west. On the next slide, you can see East Millbrook Road. The site is forested, and there is a detached house on each of the 2 parcels. This is a conditional use request. There are 11 conditions in total that restrict the entitlement in a variety of ways. These include limiting the height to 2 stories, limiting the overall floor area and first floor area of retail, restaurant, and bar uses. Service areas for trash and recycling would be located on the existing adjacent shopping center. Pole-mounted light fixtures would have a cutoff design and be limited to 20 feet in height. And any truck deliveries would need to occur between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. The conditions continue on the next slide. There are 2 conditions, there are 2 buffer areas that are established through conditions. The first one is a 50-foot buffer with the properties adjacent to the south. So the first 32 feet of this area would be undisturbed trees, and then in the next 18 feet to be replanted, and the buffer would also include an 8-foot masonry wall. The conditions would also prohibit some uses normally permitted in CX district and would limit the residential density down to 4 units per acre. So on the next slide are the remaining 3 conditions. So one relates to stormwater management beyond what is required in the UDO. So development is required to collect and discharge stormwater to the pre-development rate for 2 and 10-year storms, and this condition would add a 25-year storm event to that. Condition 10 is the other established buffer. This is a 25-foot buffer with the remaining property to the west. Would also include an 8-foot masonry wall. And then finally, outdoor dining, beverage consumption, and music would not be permitted between 11 and 8 a.m. There is an exhibit that illustrates the 2 buffer areas. As you can see, the 50-foot buffer along the property to the south, and then the remaining buffer, remaining property boundary with 1 property to the west would be the 25-foot buffer area. So this exhibit, should the conditions be approved, would be part of the zoning ordinance. So the next slide, we see the existing versus proposed. So the conditions do retain the same residential density. However, in a mixed-use district, we do have more housing types, so multi-unit housing would be permitted. And then the conditions also limit the overall development, so that's 40,000 square feet for any use, and then for retail and restaurant bar, would be limited to 20,000 square feet. So the rezoning site is designated as low-density residential on the future land use map. So the request of CX3 PLCU is inconsistent with that, primarily for the non-residential uses. So approval of this request would amend the map from low-density residential to neighborhood mixed use. And there's no urban form guidance for the site. And the request is inconsistent overall with the 2030 comprehensive plan, and that includes the future land use map designation, low-density residential. The next slide shows some of the consistent policies. These have to do with compact development and locating residential commercial uses nearby one another, as well as some of the conditions that go above and beyond for buffering and stormwater mitigation. And the next slide shows the inconsistent policies, and there are 2 major themes to these. One has to do with the form and intensity of development that would be permitted in the requested district that would not offer a transition between the shopping center and the low-density residential neighborhood, but which would extend that shopping center out along East Millbrook Road and permit a much different massing and building form in the surrounding residential area. And the other theme is regarding high-impact uses. So the conditions prohibit many high-impact uses, but there are a variety of uses that the comp plan still sees as incompatible with residential uses, like bar and nightclub, drive-through facilities, and 24-hour retail that would still be permitted under the requested district. I believe, no outstanding issues. Your deadline for action is August 24th, which does fall before your next regularly scheduled meeting. So the commission does not act today, they would need to request an extension. And I can answer any questions.
Kind of one clarification, the 40,000 square foot cap is inclusive of all uses that might be on the property. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right, thank you. So now we will hear from the applicant. Michael Birch will present on behalf of the applicant. As a reminder, the applicant and those in support have 10 minutes to speak. The applicant also has a few team members signed up to be able to answer questions or report directly. Mr. Birch, if you are on the line, we're ready for you.
Great. Good morning. It's Michael Birch. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good morning. Again, Michael Birch with Longleaf Law Partners here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me in person this morning is Phil Layton, a representative of the ownership group. So just a little background on these properties. And I guess from a presentation standpoint, whoever's controlling it, if it's possible to go to that buffer exhibit, I think it'd be easy to just speak off that for right now. These two properties are owned by Mr. Austin, Dan Austin. Dan developed the Quail Corners Shopping Center immediately adjacent in the late 60s. He also developed the Quail Hollow residential subdivision to the west and southwest. He also developed office buildings on the north side of Millbrook, on the east side of Falls of Neuse, and the apartments in the northeast corner. So Mr. Austin has had great familiarity and has taken great care of this area over the last 50 plus years. These two parcels, which he tried to purchase when he was originally developing the shopping center back in the mid 60s, he was finally able to acquire within the last year. And as you know, the Quail Corner Shopping Center serves as a great gathering place, place for folks to grab food, other goods and services, coffee. And so the vision is to really continue that success on these two parcels and to really tie in to the existing shopping center. And the vision is for some ground level retail, which we capped at 20,000 square feet, and then some upper story office, which given the overall cap would also be about 20,000 square feet. And that is very similar to the existing shopping center next door, where you have retail on the bottom and offices above. I will say that Mr. Phil Layton sent a letter to the Planning Commission as well, but I just want to reiterate, knowing that we're looking at introducing commercial uses on two lots that have been residential and adjoining a number of residential lots. We knew that engagement and input and family neighbors was important. With adjoining and nearby property owners, holding a number of group meetings as well as individual meetings. And the 11 conditions that are before you today kind of represent that group work. And hopefully you received a letter or two from some of our adjoining neighbors recognizing that work and then expressing their support for the case with those conditions. I want to just make an acknowledgement that we are inconsistent with the future land use map. Again, we tried with those 11 conditions to address as many policy issues as we could, and we're attempting to get consistent with the overall comprehensive plan. I understand, as mentioned by Hannah in her presentation, there are kind of two themes that are kind of outstanding related to the additional transition and massing, but also the high impact uses. And we would like to try to address those. I want to note, I think it's important for you to understand, looking at this exhibit, that Mr. Austin also owns the property immediately to the west that fronts along Millbrook Road, as well as one of the properties to the south that's designated as 1101. And you can kind of see that on this map. It's about the fourth one along Cedarhurst from the shopping center. And then Mr. Alston's son owns and lives on the two properties immediately adjacent to the shopping center with the addresses of 1113 and 1109 Cedarhurst. But as you can see here, we're providing that 50-foot buffer, which exceeds the neighborhood transition standards, as well as a 25-foot buffer there, and relying on the neighborhood transition standards north of that up to Millbrook Road. Again, I think that we can address those two outstanding items raised by Hannah. We would like the opportunity to do that and to come back on the 25th. At the same time, this is the first time that the Planning Commission has heard this case, and so we would very much appreciate the opportunity to hear any questions or comments from the Planning Commission so that we can do our best to address everything at once and to come back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So this time I'm just going to ask Phil Layton. I know we've got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to ask Phil Layton just to provide some comments.
Hello, my name is Phil Layton. I live at 1014 Country Ridge Drive. And I just wanted to reiterate what was just said, that the conditions offered represent a joint effort in a spirit of cooperation between the adjoining property owners and the developer. I live in Quail Hall. I live about 2 streets over from the shopping center. And one of the things that I, along with my neighbors, enjoy most about living over there is the convenience of the Quail Corner Shopping Center, the walkability that the Quail Corner Shopping Center offers for the neighborhood. And this rezoning will give us a chance to have more shopping options, more office options, which will enhance the walkability factor, which is so important to so many people this time. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your support or any questions or suggestions you may have regarding this. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair. That's all from the applicant.
Sorry, can y'all hear me?
Yes. We can't hear you any longer.
This is Travis. It looks like we've lost Chairman Tomasulo from the meeting. So what I might suggest is Vice Chair Hicks, you might want to pick up while we try to get him back to the line. When you're on mute right now.
Tika, you're up.
Okay. All right, I'll do my best here. Let's see, so I think we just heard from the applicant. Is there anybody here today to speak for or against the case?
We do have one member of the public who signed up. Ray, can you confirm that the person's here?
Looks like
yes, we have Jennifer Chen. I do not have her on.
Matt, are you back?
Yes, I am back. Sorry. Somehow my internet just cut out.
I'll hand it back over to you then.
Okay, thanks. So I guess for clarification, Ray, were you saying that the person who was signed up to speak is not there?
Yeah, I do not have Jennifer Chen. Jennifer Chen is signed up to speak. I do not have her.
Okay. Well, if that changes, please just cut in and let us know.
Yep.
Well, I guess thank you to the applicant. I don't believe I missed the end of that. I just missed the transition. So we've heard from the applicant and, sorry, getting back on, reloading my documents. So now I guess opening it up for discussion, I will kind of add that it does sound like the applicant, and we can ask them, is looking for some extra time to work with staff on amending some conditions. I would assume that they also meet with the neighbors to make sure that they get their approval as well. I know I received a few notes from a lot of the neighbors who were supportive of the conditions and just wanting to affirm that the conditions were stayed in place. And I guess just with those in context, just wanted to open it up for discussion. Any questions or comments for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Hicks?
I guess for the applicant, a small comment. Condition number 5 says truck deliveries to the uses on the property shall be between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday. I can't quite remember what typically we see, but that seems kind of late at night for truck delivery. That potentially that's next to a residential area, so I would be interested in hearing a little bit about how they came to those hours.
Mr. Birch, are you on the line still?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a topic of conversation with the neighbors. We kind of talked through needs of a retail operation, and again, 9 o'clock was something that they were comfortable with as an end time for truck deliveries. I think 9 o'clock seems to be kind of in the range of what we've had in the past. Usually when you have a grocery anchored center, which this wouldn't be, just given the size limitations of retail, but, hours of delivery are often, later, much later. So this was earlier than some other retail cases that y'all have seen maybe over the years. But it was something that the neighbors, again, we were fully engaged with all of the adjacent owners and those living a little bit further out as well. And kind of all came to that as an appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments or discussion? Seeing none, I guess I will turn to the applicant and possibly Mr. Bowers. I guess for clarification, Mr. Birch, what it sounds like I'm hearing you say is that you'd like to work with staff to amend a few conditions to improve the consistency?
That's correct. That's correct. So, and we think we can do that by the end of the week, which would allow us to come back on the 25th. But I think the staff report in his comments identified, we anticipate adding a condition related to the building setback along Millbrook Road. We also anticipate adding conditions related to the hours of operation. Right now, like a 24-hour operation, that's not the intent here. So we're going to add a condition around that, potentially, regulate drive-through window as well. So those types of things to make the conditions line up with the vision of this shopping center kind of extension.
Okay. Great. Well, I guess technically, from a technical standpoint, Ken, it looks like the deadline's the 24th.
Correct.
And our next meeting's the 25th. So would it be better for us to just defer till the 25th or to request a formal, Seeing it, no other comments from commissioners with any concern around this.
There appears to be confidence from the applicant that they can be prepared for the commission to act on the 25th. And if that's the case, then notwithstanding the fact that the deadline was the 24th, you will still be able to report it out to City Council at their September 1st meeting without a time extension.
Okay, great. Then I will go ahead and I will make a motion to defer case Z720 to the August 25th Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner Bennett?
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Janitha, if you are ready, could you please take call?
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Chair Tomasulo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
All right. So the 2-week extension passes unanimously 9-0. And at this point, I do just want to touch base with everyone. We have done really great today. We still have one more case. It is 12 on the dot, but I think compared to our past meetings, we're doing pretty well. So I'm just going to ask, out of consideration for future meetings and the applicant who has been, I think this has been in the queue for a while. Is everyone okay to stay around for this last one? Okay, and understanding that if someone does have to sign off, then they can, but it looks like we have an overwhelming amount that can stay on, so we'll just keep moving. So TCZ 120 is a request to modify zoning conditions and master plan for a property at Homewood Banks Drive and Blue Ridge Road. The property was last rezoned on 2012. Mark Holland will present on behalf of city staff.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Again, this is TCZ 1-20. It's for Crabtree Village. This would be to amend the conditions associated with Master Plan MP-1-12 and the rezoning that's associated with it. It is Z19-12. And just to get you oriented with the property, it is the lots that are identified as Lot 2 and Lot 3 of Crabtree Village, and this is at the intersection of Glenwood and 440, just as you can see, just south of what is Crabtree Valley Mall, and is at the intersection of Crabtree Valley Avenue and Blue Ridge Road. And this is a copy of the preliminary site plan for lots 2 and 3 that was submitted by the applicant for the proposed development. A copy of this is in your packet. The petitioner is requesting revisions to allow the following modifications. I'll try to go through these as quickly as possible. The construction of phase 2 of development as a single building encompassing all or a portion of lots 2 and 3, and revise additional relative language within the master plan accordingly to allow buildings 7 and buildings 8 through 10 to be as few as one building or as many as 4 distinct buildings. They would like to remove the limitation of 39,000 square feet of floor area for a single retail use or a single tenant, and they would remove the minimum area of 15,000 square feet. With this, they would also increase the number of allowed hotel rooms to 230 from the current 200 rooms. For any proposed parking deck, They would be allowed to have a minimum setback of 20 feet from the Homewood Banks right-of-way, which is the street that is to the west, and 50 feet from all other public rights-of-way. The current condition establishes a setback of 50 feet from all public rights-of-way. They would also like to revise the private streets and driveways to have a width of 23 feet as opposed to the current 25 feet. And the parking requirements would be modified to reflect the proposed uses for the project. They also wish to modify the maximum height of 65 feet for the parking deck to 65 feet on the parking deck on lots 2 and 3. The current maximum is 3 stories. They wish to modify the condition to allow consideration of all slopes and topography on for the placement of prominent entrances to all buildings directly to and adjacent or within directly adjacent to and within 50 feet of the public right-of-way, and to apply the required building materials only on those facades that can be viewed from the public right-of-way. The current condition states that 50% of the identified building materials shall be used on conditioned buildings exclusive of fenestration. The applicant states in their statement of support that the Crabtree Village Master Plan should be amended as it applies to lots 2 and 3 because of the flexibility built into the master plan that was superseded by UDO limitations on administrative adjustment or amendments. As a result, those changes that could have been made at a staff level now require rezoning. The master plan included a level of specificity and detail, understanding that certain adjustments could be made administratively, but the UDO now prevents those changes without a rezoning. Additionally, the master plan includes a number of standards and references that are no longer applicable and have been affected by the new UDO and changes to the surrounding area since the original adoption of this master plan. With that, staff will take any questions, and I would also note that the applicant is on hand to speak additionally on these proposed revisions.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we will hear from the applicant, Mr. Birch, to present on behalf of the applicant. As a reminder, they have 10 minutes to speak, and they do have a handful of representatives on hand to answer any questions as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thanks. And if possible, if staff or someone who's controlling the presentation, if you could just put the site plan back up. It was maybe the second slide of the staff presentation. So again, Michael Birch with Longleaf Law Partners. Also believe Seth Mendelson and Ryan Solo with Silver Hills and Edwards Communities, the owner-developer, are on, as well as John Kaczynski, engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates. So first, I want to give a little background on the site and the master plan, and then want to touch on a few things highlighted by Mr. Holland. So Edwards Communities purchased these two properties back in 2019, and these parcels are part of the Crabtree Village Master Plan, which was originally adopted in 2006 and then amended in 2012. That amendment in 2012 was to facilitate development of Phase 1 there at the intersection of Homewood Banks and Blue Ridge Road. For this portion of the master plan, the one that we're looking at now, lots 2 and 3, the master plan allowed for a mix of retail, office, hotel, residential with heights of up to 200 feet, another building up to 135 feet, as well as a parking deck. And what is being proposed and is essentially development of the residential density that is left within the master plan, which is 232 dwelling units, as well as some small retail, about 10,000 square feet. Again, as I mentioned, Edwards Communities bought this property back in 2019 because the master plan permitted development of these lots for 232 dwelling units, and they submitted an ASR moving forward, thinking that what they wanted to do was already entitled. But after getting the first round of staff comments, staff had identified a number of aspects of the master plan that were unclear in and of itself, and made further unclear because of the adoption of the UDO. There were conflicting provisions. Obviously, the UDO severely constrained amendments to master plans, despite language throughout the master plan that gave an enormous amount of flexibility. And so instead of kind of going around and around in circles with staff trying to figure out interpretation issues, we instead decided to proceed down a path to just clarify and make clear the provisions of the master plan through this process. All of our proposed amendments are really related to site layout issues. We're not attempting to change any uses or any densities. I know it showed that we were requesting 30 additional hotel rooms. I'm not sure where that came from, and we would put it back down to 200. Again, all of these things, essentially the purpose of this is to put the developer in the position they thought they were in when they purchased the property, and to, again, clarify the master plan and to really facilitate development of these two lots, which have laid undeveloped for 14 years, despite being entitled for a large amount of development. So just want to run through, again, this text change. We initially went to City Council and provided them with a list of proposed changes to the master plan. Those largely stayed the same through this process. Council authorized us to go through that process, and so we're here at this point. Just touching on some of the items that Mr. Holland identified, just want to note with regard to allowing development with one building. Again, we think that that was provided for in the existing master plan, certainly allowed with an administrative amendment of the master plan, but to clarify, we have just added language that says it can in fact be done as one building. With regard to the retail, we did remove the minimum of 15,000 square feet to allow for the 10,000 square feet that is now proposed. And as y'all know, in this area, given the mall and the out parcels around the mall, the need for additional retail is low, but we wanted to provide some walkable retail amenity to the proposed apartments, the existing apartments to our south, the new apartments that were constructed across both Homewood Banks Drive and Blue Ridge Road since this original master plan. I do want to note from a parking deck, both setback and height standpoint, that we're really not proposing to change any of that. The parking deck height that is allowed by the master plan, and this is in section 7B, both provides a 20-foot setback along Homewood Banks Drive, and it also provides for a maximum height of the deck on this lot as 65 feet. There is a provision that says about parking deck location. It says parking deck will either be set back 50 feet and limited to 3 levels, or there's some design specifications. So again, under the master plan, you could have had the parking deck set back 20 feet, 60 feet, 65 feet tall, with some landscaping and screening. And it is that which, again, we wanted to clarify, but we are not attempting to change what was otherwise allowed. we did increase and make more specific the planting schedule and require evergreen trees within that, call it protected yard, screening landscaped area between the road and the buildings. But I just did want to make that clear that we're not attempting to change what was already allowed with regard to parking deck height or setback. With regard to the private drive width, that's more a recognition of what has already been constructed on the property by phase one, that 23 feet. With regard to parking, there was a parking study that allowed for a reduction. And what we're essentially doing is just, instead of having to go back and rely on that old study, we're really just applying kind of the urban frontage standards for parking, just given the nature of this area, the walkability of this area, its access to the mall and other services, and the retail that's being provided. And then again, with regard to the building materials, I think there was consensus around it. The master plan was really trying to regulate the exterior of the building viewed from the public. And again, so we were just adding some clarity to that language. I also want to note those are really the only changes or revisions and clarifying provisions that we are pursuing. Because of some regulation changes since this master plan was initially adopted and then revised in 2012, we did have to make some explicit provisions for compliance with UDO or express waiver of a UDO provision to allow for the development that was intended by this master plan. This proposed site plan is both attached to the proposed amended master plan. It is also the one that has been in review with the city through 2 full rounds of review. They suggested that we include this site plan, attached to the master plan, so there's really no questions about what the intent is. And so, again, Edwards Communities, when they bought the property, thought that they would have an approved ASR by now and probably approved site permits and could have been started on site work by this time. Not anticipating having to go through this process, but in working with staff, we thought it'd be better for everybody to have a document that was clear, that we all agreed on. And so we have pursued this process and would ask for your recommendation for approval to the city council so that Edwards can restart their process on this, what will be a $40 million investment in a growing key part of town. So with that, again, I'm available for any questions. We also have our engineer and ownership representatives on the line, but look forward to addressing any comments the commission may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Birch. No one has signed up in opposition to this, so at this time I'll turn it to fellow commissioners for any questions, clarifications to either staff or the applicant. Sorry, right now I am not able to see everybody. There we go. All right, did anybody have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, was there, seeing no discussion, I mean, it does seem like a lot of this is kind of trying to help the older master plan fit with the UDO and meet certain requirements, so that they can actually proceed and meet the developmental service requirements when filing a plan, so that they have proper alignment with the new UDO. So I guess I'm willing to just make a motion to approve TCZ 120, saying that it is, just double check before I speak out of turn. I forget what the TCZs, is it the same protocol? Travis?
Yeah, you have the same protocol as far as adopting a consistency statement. There's no, since this is a site specific, it can be attached to the flume as well. So,
oh, okay, okay.
I believe there's a draft consistency statement in the packet following the staff report.
Okay, you're right. Sorry. So, you know, I will make a motion to approve as the proposed text amendment is consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan, and approval of the proposed text amendment is reasonable and in the public interest. Do we have a second? Commissioner O'Haver has a second. So now, Chanitha, if you are ready, if we could take roll call.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
She had to leave.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner O'Haver?
Aye.
Commissioner and Chair Thomas Solo?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. So the motion passes unanimously, 8-0. And that concludes the active cases for today. Congrats. I think this is the first time we have kind of gotten through everything. So thank you, everyone, for your thoughts, considerations, patience throughout all this. I think it's getting a little bit smoother, and really, you know, Travis has been a tremendous help too, just prepping on the front end, understanding what can and can't do, as well as Mr. York and Mr. Bowers. So now, I guess, so we really just have the small reports. I know that Commissioner Hicks has to head out. So thank you, Commissioner Hicks. I will say, but before she leaves, this can be part of my report as chairperson, but well, you don't need this extra information, but it's entertaining. For the first time ever, I'm going on a family vacation that we planned about 10 months ago with my parents and my in-laws. So I'll be gone in 2 weeks. So Commissioner Hicks is gonna take over for the regular Planning Commission meeting, and her VP responsibilities will also be, or VC will also be heading up the Committee of the Whole. For that, and with that, Commissioner Hicks, you're welcome to head out. Just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, and have a great vacation. I'll see everybody else in a couple weeks. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
And so a few other orders of business I did want to announce. I said it in the kind of little welcome back email, but that committees have been formed. I had a good chance to speak with a handful of commissioners kind of leading up to spring break, and do hope to speak with the rest of you all kind of in the next few weeks. Thanks for your willingness to just kind of hop on the phone and chat a little bit. Text Change Committee will meet next Tuesday, August 18th. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is at 4 p.m. Is that 4 to 6 p.m. next Tuesday?
That's correct.
Okay. And then our next Planning Commission meeting is August 25th at its regular time, where Commissioner Hicks will be at the helm, and then the Committee of the Whole will meet later that week on August 27th, which is also, again, Thursday at 4 p.m., correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Well, that is kind of my report, and just to kind of hope everyone had a nice summer break. I know I'm looking forward to a little bit of a cool down in the fall. I guess I can turn it over. Are there any report of the members?
I'm sorry, I think we missed the minutes, the approval of the minutes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Then, okay, yeah, you're right. So did anyone have any comments or updates to the minutes after reviewing? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Commissioner Bennett?
I didn't have anything to correct. I just had a general comment that it seems like for some of the cases, some of the discussion isn't captured. I just want to make sure that, I know we're not doing transcripts, but I just want to make sure we're at least capturing the different discussions that we have around the cases. In some cases, some discussion is left out so that if it were included, it would be clearer as to why people voted the way they did. So I just want to make sure that we summarize all of the discussion.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. I think we can probably talk to the team at the city to kind of figure out how we can maybe better translate. Thanks.
Okay, and Chair Tomasillo, this is Commissioner Winters.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification, when you were talking about the upcoming schedule, I just wanted to be clear about committee assignments. Has that been finalized?
Yeah, I was saying that that the committees have been finalized, and Travis will be sending that out shortly. But I'm also going to be following up with different individuals as well. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. I missed that part. Thank you.
And now onto the report of the Deputy Planning Director.
Okay, quick updates from the last City Council meeting. 4 of your items reported out are going to public hearing on September 1st. Includes the 4720 on Raleigh Road, C5119 on Glenwood Avenue and Glenwood Exchange Place, C5319 on Thornton Road, and also text change TC720, which was mezzanines. You got time extensions for 4 items, 3 of which you dealt with today, which included C1719 on Capitol Boulevard, C5019 on Method, and Z1820 on Carolina Avenue. The other one is C1220 on Prince Drive, which you did not hear today, as a deadline for your review of September 9. You had asked that the council consider a text change to expand the level of outdoor seating available for bars in the NX zoning district. They took you up on that, have asked for a staff report. That staff report is going back to the council as a special item a week from today on August 18th. Staff is making a recommendation that we revise the use limitations in NX to only apply to bars that are located within a certain distance of residential. City Council has authorized some additional text changes related to a recently completed study of hillside development. Those will be coming your way sometime in the coming months. And then there were 5 items approved, the comp plan amendment CP 818 on Rogers Farm Road that was out New Bern, eastern edge of town. TC 1619, the ADU text change was approved. TC 1719, the design alternate text change was approved, and both components of TC 120 dealing with parking requirements, building heights, and cottage courts were all approved. And the only other news from there is that on July 14th, the new District D council member Stormy Fort was appointed to replace the seat left vacant by the resignation of Sage Martin.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Bowers. With that, and seeing no other comments, that concludes, Commissioner McIntosh?
I was just going to say, do we need to go back to Shanita's request to vote on the minutes?
Thanks. Sorry, I'll get back on the rails. Shanita, are you able to give a roll call for us to accept the minutes?
No one made a motion, I'm sorry. It was a motion.
I will make approval of the minutes.
Second.
All right.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Commissioner
Winters. Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Bennett.
Aye.
Commissioner Fox.
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman.
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh. Commissioner O'Haver.
Sorry, aye. Sorry.
He had to step off.
O'Haver.
Sorry, never mind.
You're on mute, O'Haver.
Aye.
And Chair Tomasulo.
Aye.
Commissioner Winters.
Aye.
All right. So the minutes pass unanimously. 7. Commissioner O'Haver has one kind of.
Curious for an update with Dr. Caesar. I was super excited when we had her on right before summer break and about the opportunities there. And I just want to confirm, did we, so that we could all be engaged in some initial discussions on that? I think I recall we discussed, is it possible to put that in the committee of the whole for some initial discussion around that? Or how were we going to deal with that so that it didn't affect this? I couldn't remember, and if this isn't the appropriate time to talk about it, that's fine. Maybe we can talk about it. Subcommittee, I just want to make sure that's continuing to move forward.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, we have been having discussion offline about the committees and what their focus will be, and that will also be including with the chairs. I think that everybody wants to take part in that, and the committee of the whole makes a lot of sense. I think it also the idea that some of the strategic planning can also have a role in that as well. And I think that it'll probably be up to us as commissioners to figure out how much of the work is done where and when. But yes, I did confirm with Travis that we did formally move it to. I guess technically it's part of our agenda now, and I mean that is a good. It was my understanding that it is at the committee of the whole, but now that you bring it up, in prep for launching the committees, I'm still trying to get up to date since we haven't done committees virtually yet, how all of that will work, and that's kind of why I've been a little hesitant to reach out to everybody, but that is all on the table and is coming, and so.
Great, thank you, Matt.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I thank everybody for sticking around a little bit later. Great today, and I will see you all in September, if not at the next text change committee. Thank you, everybody.